Hey guys, welcome back for the afternoon. Hope everybody had a good lunch. I took Belle out. I ate some loquats off my loquat tree, which is not doing well this year. I'm kind of bummed about. The weirdest thing, there are no, today I did find one that had a seed inside of it. Usually the loquats have seeds, at least one seed, because they're big. Like loquats are really small, but they have at least one big seed in the middle of them. Sometimes they have two or three. Sometimes they're really big, like, for a loquat, they're big, and they'll have two or three. Usually they're about this size with like just one, like a pit in the middle of them. These have not had seeds in the middle of them this year. I'm like, what the heck? Why don't they have seeds? What does that mean? But I did. I found one today. It had a seed in it. I was like, okay. I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means that next year's aren't gonna happen. Does that mean that they're not gonna have fruit next year? Like, I don't know. I've never had them not have seeds in them. I don't know what that means. I guess I could Google it. But they're like shriveling up and dying. Like, there's almost, usually I can, maybe for like a month, I can go out there every day and like eat a couple of loquats. They're almost all gone already. And I've maybe 3 or 4 days I've gone out there and been able to get some off the tree. Oh, cool. What'd you have, Carla? I'm having my protein shake. I had my protein shake and loquats. I think 3 loquats. And I got dinner started. I'm making shepherd's pie. So I went ahead and browned the ground beef. So I don't have to do that later. I have got to quit eating junk because I've gained a little bit of weight back, like 4 pounds. But I counted yesterday from my highest to where I am now. I've gone down 6 sizes. 6. Oh, that sounds good. Except for hash browns. I don't know what it is. I'm not a picky eater, and I usually don't have a texture thing like some people do. But hash browns and tater tots, that shredded, diced potato thing, the texture thing, I don't like it. Now breakfast potatoes, like the chopped, you like cubed, cooked, like breakfast potatoes, I like that. But I'm not crazy. You know how like you go to McDonald's or Burger King and they have like the what do they call them? The hash rounds, where it's like a big like hash patty thing. I don't like those. If we go out for breakfast, I don't ever get hash browns. Travis likes hash browns. I get breakfast potatoes every time because I don't know. I'm weird. Now, the only time I like tater tot casserole, which I never in my life had until my stepdaughters taught me how to make it. I was like, tater tot casserole? Why has no one ever told me this exists? My stepdaughter, when I had before I got my shoulder replaced, when I had my rotator cuff surgery done, I don't know, like 4 or 5 years before I had to have the whole shoulder replaced, I had um the rotator cuff repaired. And my youngest stepdaughter actually stayed, she moved in with me for like 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and took care of me. I didn't have to lift a finger. She cleaned my house, she cooked, she did everything. She was amazing. And she taught me how to make things I'd never even done before. I cook stuff now that she taught me how to cook. Um, but she made tater tot casserole. I was like, why has no one ever told me this existed before? So I like tater tot casserole, and um, Domino's has loaded tots, loaded tater, and I think Sonic has them too. I like that. So if you smother tater tots with stuff, I will eat them like that because I guess the texture isn't as pronounced because it's like all mixed up with like meat and sauce and cheese, and I don't know what it is about shredded potatoes that I just don't like the texture. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't really change the taste. It just I don't I don't know. I can't explain it. I don't know. But any other way you cook a potato, I love potatoes. I remember years and years ago, before I was diabetic, I remember I was making french fries one day and I was like, man, I love these things. I hope I don't ever become a diabetic because I love potatoes so much. And then I became a diabetic. I still eat them though. It's just not as much. I love french fries though. Oh my. I got cinnamon stuck on the side of my cup. Oh, that sounds good too. They're late. I hope it's because she's giving that lawyer a dressing down. I don't understand why she doesn't say something to him. I just watched a short that somebody posted. I didn't look to see who posted it. They put him in their taco salad? That sounds good. Um, I just watched a short someone posted from the Karen Reed trial the last one, where Alan Jackson was like, I thought you said you were gonna put a not guilty next to every charge. No, I didn't do the portal from the earlier stream because StreamYard was not cooperating for one. And then I realized that I hadn't set up the afternoon stream anyway, so it wouldn't have worked. Because then after I ended the stream, I was like, oh, wait, I didn't even set up the afternoon stream yet anyway, so I couldn't have portaled even if StreamYard had behaved. I don't know what is going on with StreamYard today. I like potato pancakes, but I've not had any in years, like since I was a kid. Mmm, that sounds good though. I love taco salad. What happened, Judy? My favorite thing in the world right now, though, is Zaxby's that Asian salad that they have. What do they call it? Sensation salad or something like that. But it's got, I think, teriyaki sauce on it, and then it's some kind of a citrus Asian salad dressing, and then it comes with a vegetable egg roll. It's so good. I could live on these though. I love these so much. That is weird. The other day, trying to remember what it was I wanted to watch. It was, I think it was about, I think it was about this case. And it was a law and crime thumbnail, but it wasn't the law and crime uh, feed. It was just a true crime YouTuber. One that I liked, but that's not what I wanted to watch. I wanted to watch the law and crime episode of it. And I was like, that is so weird. Why is the wrong thumbnail on the video? And then, like, two videos over was the true crime one. You know, I think her name's Annalise or something like that. So, like, two videos down was her video. So I clicked on that, and then I went back and I clicked on the law and crime one, and the same exact video. So, like, one had the right thumbnail, and the other one had the law and crime thumbnail, but it was the same video. I was like, that is weird. I haven't had potato pancakes in forever. I don't think I've ever made them. And I've had them when I was a kid, and I don't know if my mom made them or my dad made them, because my dad could cook too. My dad was a good cook. Like on Sundays, if we had fried chicken on Sundays, that was my dad. My dad would make us fried chicken on Sundays. Yes, court is late. They've been pretty good about being on time, though, surprisingly. This is probably the latest they've been coming back from lunch. So that short from Karen Reed's last trial, I'd forgotten about that. Man, Alan Jackson, he's the GOAT. He's like, so Bev says, no, I said I was tired and I would think about it. And he said, no, I thought you said that you were tired and you would do it later. And she said, no, that's not how we do it in Massachusetts. And he said, I don't care how you do it in Massachusetts. I care that you do it to make sense. I forgot that he had said that to her about the putting not guilty on the form instead of just guilty. Because if they had done that, the ones that were left blank, if there had been not guilties there, they could have checked not guilty. And we would not be in the mess that we're in now. And she's being sued by, I didn't read the whole lawsuit because it's a bunch of pages long, but just by a group of average citizens about the buffer zone around the courthouse. And they're like, we want to be out here protesting against Bev, and she won't let us. That's our First Amendment right. And Turtle Boy is on the prosecution's um, witness list. He's not going to say anything that's going to help the prosecution at all. They are completely just doing that to keep him out of the trial. So now he has a motion that is going to be going to Bev to ask him to be exempt from the sequestration, however you say that word, allowing him to be in there. But in the last trial, he wasn't allowed to be in the courtroom when certain witnesses were testifying, the ones that he supposedly intimidated. And so I doubt that Bev's going to let him in the courtroom. Yeah, the pink thing gets me too. Because what if you live in Canton, you have nothing to do with this trial, you don't care about this trial, you don't want to be mixed up in this trial, and you just decide to go for a walk and you have a pink shirt on? Are you going to get tackled by a cop if you decide to walk by the courthouse in a pink shirt? That's ridiculous. Right. They have protection orders against it. But how big is the buffer zone? Is it a realistic? Gosh, I can't talk now. Realistic buffer zone? Are innocent? I shouldn't say innocent. They're all innocent. Um, uninvolved people gonna accidentally walk in the buffer zone? It's it's so stupid. I mean, as long as there's like no violence, I don't see a problem. And if they're so worried about jurors hearing things that are going on outside the courtroom, they should soundproof the jury rooms. It's not like it's not something that could happen again. I haven't heard of any violence. The only somewhat violence I heard of was when Turtle Boy went to Canton that day, and oh, and this isn't even in Canton, it's in Dedham. Why would he be banned from YouTube? I don't think he's violated any YouTube policies. There are plenty other people that I would like to get banned from YouTube. I mean, you can be a disgusting person and still not violate YouTube policies, which I don't think he is. He means well. I don't agree with how he goes about doing some of the things he does. Yeah, yeah, yeah. There are much worse than him, I think, on YouTube. Yeah, and I think he means well. I just there are different ways to do things. And the only time there's been any violence that I know of, and I don't know if I'd even call that violence, when he went to Canton and he got confronted outside CF McCarthy's. Somebody, excuse me, somebody grabbed his phone and threw it out in the street. Jill Daniels, is she Jim McCabe's sister? She's somebody's sister. Julie Albert's sister. I don't know. Too many people. You can barely keep them straight. Oh, by the way, oh, Jill's not here yet. Is Jill here? I put, in case you guys didn't see it, I put um charts up on the community page, the post page, whatever they call it now, of all the people in the Karen Reed trial. And American courts posted, that's a lot of work. Like, are you kidding me? I didn't do that. Judy got them from me. I don't know where Judy got them from. I want a trial to come close to me, like a big trial, so I can go to it. But at the same time, I'd want to stream it, and I can't stream it and be at it at the same time. You know, thinking back, I could have gone to Danny Rolling's trial. Well, he pled guilty, but they did the penalty phase part of the trial, which I did that as a trials of the past. That was my first trials of the past. But I don't think I could have done it. I don't think I could have been in the same room with that man. I did a lot of screaming during that trial. That was a rough one for me. If I had known about the one in Ocala, RA did that one. Recovery Addict did that one. I did her sentencing, but I didn't do her trial. Recovery Addict did it, and I watched it with him. But I didn't know about it till right when it started. Um, what was her name? Susan Lawrence, something like that. She shot her neighbor through her door because her kids would play. There was like an empty lot on the side of her house, and the owner of the lot gave the kids permission to play there. And I guess they made noise and they would leave their toys there, and sometimes the toys would end up in her yard. Oh my gosh, I don't know. That's a lot of document. I thought usually they were just like court summons. Yeah, that was a good trial. I wish I'd known about it beforehand though, so I could have actually gone. I mean, I guess I could have gone. I could have picked a day and gone, but she was just a mean lady that didn't like kids. Didn't want them playing around her house. I felt so bad. I watched a news clip, and I know they have to report the news, but there are some things that are private and they just should not show. They actually showed, I guess it was the little boys, the two little boys' grandfather showed them, showed him telling the boys that their mom died. And some things should be private. Some things the whole world doesn't need to see. And I cried when I saw it. I was like, really? Did we have to show that to the whole world? And they were crying and they were like, no, I hate her so much. Why did she do this? I hate her so much. And I just sat there and cried right along with them. That is the most heartbreaking thing. Dang, they're a half hour late. I wonder what's going on. Oh, wait a minute. Are you kidding me? Frozen? Is it frozen? It's frozen. I bet you it's frozen. I bet you they've been back and I've just been sitting here running my
We are back on the record in the case of People versus Linda Stermer. Any matters to address before we bring in the jury? On the bench? Yeah.
I was fixing to reload it. I was thinking maybe they were doing something to that lawyer.
Okay, we'll bring in the jurors now.
Yeah, I know. Oh, well, we'll catch up to the live. I'm sorry, guys.
Welcome back, Terry. And sir, you're reminded you're still under oath?
Yes.
Okay. And Mr. Blair, you're at?
Thank you. Sir, would you agree with me that
StreamYard, why are you doing this to me today? I sped up my internet.
clarifying question?
I'll allow for clarification.
Yes.
Sped up my internet. I cleared all my cookies. I did all the things. All the things. Work.
You were asked of starting in a room, as we've described here in court, I guess, with Ms. Stermer being downstairs and Todd being up in the living room. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Is there a conceivable way that a person could be, well, let me rephrase the question. How does that, or is it conceivable that a fire could start in one room and somebody be in another room, but that person in the other room be responsible for pouring an accelerant or something like that in a room and catching fire?
Objection, Your Honor. Speculating on possibilities. We talk probabilities.
Direct response to his line of questioning, Your Honor.
I'll overrule the objection. That's responsive to the cross-examination.
Yes, it is possible to pour a flammable liquid like gasoline in one room, and then as the vapor from that gasoline will spread and could potentially find an ignition source. Without, I'm sorry.
That's okay. So if there is an open flame in a room, such as a fireplace, and a person dumps gasoline in that room and then runs out and leaves, it is still conceivable that room could still catch fire.
Yes.
And Mr. Mueller, in fact, brought up Ms. Stermer's statement that she was downstairs in the laundry room doing laundry. You recall that?
Yes.
That also works on a presumption that Ms. Stermer is telling us the truth about her location in the house. Is that correct?
Now he's asking for credibility determination. Well, he already determined her to be credible. Never mind.
Is he
So
testifying?
you're withdrawing your objection?
I withdraw the
Okay.
Ask that again.
Sure. We're working on certain presumptions here that the statement provided by Ms. Stermer is an accurate depiction of what happened on January 7th, 2007.
That is a presumption, yes.
Because what we know, based on your opinion, if it's fair to say, is that there was a fuel source, gasoline, in the living room, and it was exposed to an open flame, correct?
Correct.
Continuing to lead.
Clarify.
Yeah, there is a lot of leading, so if you can try to, I get you may need to do some for redirect, but.
Thank you. And that's kind of where I'm going. I have to lead a little bit to redirect, or else we're going to be here all day, Your Honor. So we don't know what the source of the open flame necessarily was in the living room at the Stermer residence.
Exactly? No.
Could have come from the fireplace.
That's an option, yes.
Could have been someone threw a match on it,
That is a possibility.
or some other flame source.
Correct.
You were asked about Linda's clothing not testing positive for gasoline. You recall those?
Yes.
Is it possible to not get gasoline on your clothing when you're pouring gas?
Yes, it's possible.
It's also possible she could have changed clothes.
It's possible.
There are certain possibilities here that do exist that explain some of the evidence in this case. Is that a fair statement?
Leading again.
Clarifying, Your Honor.
I'll allow it for clarification.
Yes, it's possible.
You were asked about, and we're kind of cut off on this, so I'm going to kind of go on to this a little bit. Mr. Stermer's sweatpants. Do you recall those questions?
Yes.
And about how they did not, may or may not have burned. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Are there certain factors that play into how clothing burns or whether clothing might burn?
Yes, there's when clothes.
You literally
It's
asked.
responsive to cross-exam, I'll allow it.
So yes, when clothing, that all comes down to depending on how it's formed or how it's placed, if there's something on it. And I briefly mentioned something. Well, there could have been a blanket on his lap. That's kind of goes back to what I talked earlier in my testimony about putting leaves on top of a fire. It would like almost smother it. So if there's something over the sweatpants that may have prevented burning, or the fact, or how the sweatpants were placed. Are they stretched out, they hung on a line, or are they clumped up in a big wad? Those are all going to, that is all going to affect how or if they would burn.
Could be human intervention as well. For
Yes.
instance, if I'm on fire and I'm doing this with my hands and slapping the fire or brushing the fire out, that could put the fire out.
Potentially.
And you were also asked more questions about the statement of Ms. Stermer after Mr. Stermer exited the residence. Do you recall those?
Yes, yes, go ahead.
Do you recall the testimony that, or the statement of Ms. Stermer where she described Todd as being on fire?
Yes.
So based on that statement, we would know Todd is on fire, but his pants did not burn. Fair?
Yeah, but you could rephrase that. It calls for speculation.
Fair. Mr. Stermer was on fire based on that statement, correct?
Correct.
And we have evidence that he was burned. Was that fair?
Yes.
And there is some testimony or questioning about whether or not his sweatpants would have burned away. Do you recall that?
Yes.
What we do know, I guess from what I'm trying to get at here, is while he was on fire, his sweatpants did not burn. Fair?
Form of the question again.
Yeah, I'm not sure where you're going with it, but maybe more open-ended questions.
I'm having a hard time asking open-ended questions about this, Your Honor. I'm sorry. Without going thunder into an area. What I'm trying, I guess, to get at here is, well, you know what? I'll leave it where it is. I think I've covered it enough. NFPA 921 is a reference guide, correct?
Correct.
Are you expected to memorize NFPA 921?
No.
As being described as a reference guide, is that something you would reference if you need guidance or advice?
Yes.
When you're determining what data you collect that may or may not be relevant, are you relying on your training and experience?
Yes.
So based on your training and experience, you would know that some items contained at a fire scene have nothing to do with anything. Is that fair?
Yes, that's a decision that's made through training and experience.
Stop with the leading objection or leading question.
Every question.
It's clarifying, Your Honor, and I'm just trying to get to the point of this redirect.
I'll allow it. I think it's just to get through this in a more efficient manner. So I'll allow it.
Thank you, Your Honor. You were shown a large poster board by Mr. Mueller about NFPA 921. Do you recall that?
Well, couple of them.
Couple
yes.
of them.
Yes.
Fair. One of which was talking about an incendiary fire, I believe. Is that, am I correct on that, or am I mistaken?
I don't recall that, but
Okay.
I might be wrong.
Well, I recall in your testimony, you were trying to talk about an inference that you're allowed to make when it comes to an intentionally set fire. Because Mr. Mueller cut you off before you could explain that.
You didn't need the comment.
Well, that's what happened, but fair enough. Your Honor. I'm
Both
sorry.
of you are providing improper comment. I don't think the jury appreciates that, and I don't.
I apologize, Your Honor. So again,
Just
were you
for that
were attempting to
questions.
explain an inference that you're allowed to draw when it comes to fires, some fires. Is that correct?
Correct.
Can you explain to the jury what that is, please?
That was the discussion of your ignition source and the first fuel ignited. And then the third is the circumstance that brings them together. And this is not, that's for all fires, not just an intentionally set fire. in that same section, or in 921, it states that logical inferences can occur to bringing those two together. And one of the inferences specifically states where there's a flammable liquid present and you may not be able, you're likely or may not be able to find the actual ignition source.
Does it provide any other guidance other than that? Or is that the extent of it?
It guides to make sure you don't make that inference without proper evidence to say that there was a flammable liquid there. It cautions you not to make other inferences about bringing those two together.
So for instance, the inference that you're allowed to draw, if I'm clear on this, is that if there is an ignitable liquid in a room and an open source of flame, a logical inference can be drawn that the open flame set the ignitable liquid on fire, or the vapor.
I didn't hear a question mark on that.
I'll allow it.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yes, it would allow, because of the flammable liquids in the room, it allows an inference that it came in contact with an open flame.
You were asked several questions by Mr. Mueller about your previous testimony in this case. Do you recall those?
Yes.
And you had a chance to look at that testimony.
Understand? Yes.
Okay. And at any point in time during that testimony, in the 2009 testimony, for instance, in that time frame, were you ever asked by anyone about first fuel ignited or anything along those lines, if you recall?
I don't recall being asked those specific questions.
You were asked about your report and there being, or excuse me, your testimony and there being two able-bodied persons at the Stermer residence. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And you said that was a circumstance, I believe.
Yes.
Can you explain kind of more to the jury about what you mean by that?
And it's true, there's nothing in any of the reference material about able-bodied people. That is more of a common sense, what was it? A common sense observation about able-bodied people being able to self-rescue.
Not a human factor, but he's testifying what typical people would do. You wouldn't let me get into what Linda Stermer might react, how she might react.
Allow it based on his expertise if he can.
He's testifying based on his own common sense, is what he even indicated here.
Yeah.
So I guess you were explaining it was kind of a common sense thing. Can you kind of expound on that?
Well, I kind of explained to it. There's no, is there any scientific background? No. That I know of. Let me rephrase that. But it's, if I've seen in past fire investigations that there's somebody in the house who is able and discover a fire, they typically take some sort of action. Escape, call for help, go and try to save pets or something like that. There's usually some sort of action.
And when we're talking about maybe a slower building fire versus a faster fire, a slower fire such as electrical or something like that, would that be something that you would maybe expect somebody to notice?
It does call for speculation.
Have you investigated electrical fires before?
Yes.
And have you had the opportunity have you had the opportunity to observe the damage and what they look like?
Yes.
And so I guess to kind of get to the point, when you rendered your opinion that this was not an electrical fire, were you basing that based on your experience?
Yes.
This kind of seems like a silly question, but you talked about the oil lamps that were at the Stermer residence. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Do those generally contain gasoline? I asked if they generally contain gasoline.
Oil,
The oil lamps.
objection, call from the speculate. No foundation there.
Overruled.
You wouldn't find, I wouldn't expect to find those, because if you put gasoline in an oil lamp and light the wick, the fire is going to be bad. It's going to be very big and very quick. More than a person would expect from igniting a lamp with lamp oil in it.
Very good. Kind of goes without saying, but does gasoline emit an odor?
I can smell gasoline.
And does gasoline, is it a, to your knowledge, a fairly unique odor?
Liquid petroleum products have a unique odor.
Burns, hurt, and gasoline have an odor.
You were asked about the boat hypothesis by Mr. Mueller. You recall those questions?
Yes.
How was this boat described to you?
It was initially described to me as a toy boat.
Made of what material?
I wasn't told initially.
But a toy boat.
A toy boat.
Now, as part of your training and experience, are you allowed to, for lack of a better word, exclude hypotheses that just simply don't make sense?
Yes.
And in your training and experience, did that make sense to you, that there'd be gasoline in a toy boat?
It did not.
Oh, no, that's a good question.
I'll try not to plow over too much old ground, sir, but you keep calling this a guide and a reference manual. This is the guide used by all fire investigators around the world, isn't it?
I can't speak to all fire investigators around the world,
How
but
about
in the United States, that is the main guide for fire investigation.
Now, you were asked a lot of questions about possibilities. Is this possible about this? Remember that?
Yes.
You are a forensic expert, are you not?
I've never been called a forensic expert.
You're a fire cause and origin expert, are you not?
Yes.
You rely on the scientific method and scientific principles, correct?
I rely on data, sometimes scientific, sometimes other.
You don't deal in the world of possibilities, do you? Anything's possible, right?
Well, the possibilities are part of drawing a hypothesis.
And when you come to an opinion, it's based on probabilities and on evidence you find. Is that not right?
And then the hypotheses are checked by analyzing the data with it.
Right. So you were talking about electrical fires you've investigated, despite the fact that you've admitted you're not an expert in electrical, correct?
There's a big difference between an expert and knowing something about electrical fires.
Yes. But you're an expert witness. You understand that all fires are unique.
Some of them have similarities, but there's a great vast of different fires.
So you can't paint it with a broad brush. I've seen some electrical fires, so they exhibit all these same characteristics. Fair?
I never said that.
And you wouldn't say that.
I would not say that.
Because that would be intellectually dishonest, wouldn't it?
I would not say that.
Oh, it wouldn't be intellectually dishonest.
I think he was just responding to your past question that you were rephrasing. So,
You talk about the smell of gasoline,
Yes,
right? And you said, I can smell liquid petroleum products. There are several of those, right?
correct.
You can't distinguish that's gasoline versus some other kind of product that might be close. Fair?
I would never smell liquid petroleum. I would identify it, but I would never try to make a determination of what it is without a laboratory exam.
Fair enough, because your nose, and just like every other nose, you can kind of smell it. Smells like it, but I don't know.
Correct.
And you wouldn't go out on a limb, would you?
On smell alone?
Yes.
No.
Right. You were asked questions about testimony you gave in 2009 and 2010 under oath. Remember that?
Yes.
I noticed
And you
that
were
too.
asked, well, you weren't at. You're
I'm
right.
sorry. No, I'm fine.
Okay.
I've got somebody over here.
okay.
You were asked questions about, you didn't get asked about for ignition source and first fuels. Remember that question?
Yes.
It is incumbent upon you as the expert who's going to testify to the cause of a fire to tell the folks who are listening what the ignition source is, correct?
Yes.
And the first fuel, correct?
But those buzzwords may not have been used, but yes. I would tell them that what the ignition source and the first fuel.
Trial is not a cat and mouse game, is it?
It is not.
All right, so it's not about you don't ask, I don't tell. Fair?
I typically answer the questions that are asked. I try not to just start talking.
But you didn't volunteer in any of those hearings as we talked about ignition source or first fuel. Fair?
I can't remember.
I'm following up on his recross or redirect. And in terms of slower or faster fire, we're asking questions about that, remember?
Yes,
Slower and faster, those are relative terms, right?
they are.
Right. You don't use those, you're not supposed to use those, correct?
It is very subjective.
It's cautioned against by
Yes.
921
Correct.
to say anything's abnormally fast.
It is cautioned.
Right. Because there, as we explained, there are so many factors that go into the speed of a fire.
920 says you can discuss it, but you should be cautioned to making that your sole piece of data, making a decision.
Let's talk about this idea of inferring something without evidence. It's called negative corpus, is it not?
No. In negative, that is not the definition I've heard of negative corpus. I know what negative corpus is.
Negative corpus is supplying an ignition source and a first fuel where you don't have affirmative evidence of it. Negative corpus without the body, right?
Negative corpus means without the body.
Right. So you're supplying an ignition source and a first fuel without affirmative evidence of it, correct?
Well, the affirmative evidence is the fire itself.
All right, let me direct you to, if I can, the appropriate use of negative corpus. Identifying the ignition source for a fire by believing to have eliminated all ignition sources found, known, or suspected to have been present in the area of origin, and for which no supporting evidence exists, is referred to as negative corpus. You agree with that?
That is correct.
Okay. Determination of the ignition source must be based on data or logical inferences drawn from that data, correct?
Correct. Logical inferences.
And in fact, section 4.3.6.1 tells us any hypothesis that is incapable of being tested either physically or analytically is an invalid hypothesis, correct?
That is correct.
Goes on to say, a hypothesis based on the absence of data is an example of a hypothesis that is incapable of being tested, which means that's an invalid hypothesis, correct?
Correct.
And you suggest inferences that you can make based on an absence of data. The authorities that you look to say only when it's clearly defined, correct?
The logical inferences were made from data.
And it can only be used in those limited circumstances where the area of origin is clearly defined.
Correct.
Now, you previously told us that John Lentini and his scientific protocols is an authority that is referenced, correct?
I guess I'm going to object. I think we're getting crossed beyond the scope of redirect here.
No, he talked about the negative corpuses and inferences.
I'll allow it. I can go beyond the scope, but it's getting cumulative.
True. Clearly defined.
What question?
You can only use negative corpus, this absence of evidence, under limited circumstances where the area of origin is clearly defined, correct?
Correct.
And John Lentini tells us on page 128, clearly defined means that anyone, even somebody completely untrained in the investigation of fires, could look at the damage and unhesitatingly, without fear of contradiction, point at this is the authority, this is learned treatise. Your Honor,
I mean, how much of this are you gonna?
just one more
this one
sentence.
quote? Okay, after this quote, we're done. And I'm not gonna have you read the whole book to the jury.
It's 2 sentences, Your Honor.
That's why I'm asking how many sentences. We'll see if it's 2.
Without fear of contradiction, point at the location and state that's where the fire started. That would be clearly defined, isn't it?
Yes.
Now, it took you with all your training to define the area of origin in this case as a living room that's 20 by 20.
That's correct.
And you can't tell this jury anywhere in this area of origin where that fire started, fair?
The area of origin is clearly defined as the first floor living room.
So according to the authorities that I just read, somebody like any of us ought to be able to find exactly, looking at that evidence, all that damage, and find out exactly that the living room was the area of origin.
Object is the argument, but Your Honor, I think that some of the questions is proper as well.
It goes right to the impeachment.
I'm gonna sustain the objection.
In this case, we have a potential crime scene, you testified, right?
Yes.
We have a 7-foot pile of debris that you claim you excavated that's missing.
I didn't say it was missing. There's a pile of debris outside.
That 7-foot high pile you didn't see, did you?
I did not see a 7-foot pile in the photographs.
And you didn't record it.
I did not
Record
photograph
it.
it. Is that what you mean, recording?
Photograph it.
Correct.
In fact, so when you told us you looked for photographs of the excavation, you just couldn't find them. Remember you told us that yesterday?
Yes.
That's technically true You looked and you couldn't find them, correct?
Yes,
Because you didn't take them, correct?
that's probably what happened.
So technically, what you told us was true, a half-truth. I looked and I couldn't find them. What you didn't tell us was that it's because you didn't take any pictures. Fair?
I don't have a specific recollection of taking that photograph, a photograph of the post-excavation.
Or during excavation.
I do not have a direct recollection of photographs during the excavation.
Famous last words, but last question. There was no gasoline found other than Todd Stermer sweatpants in the area of origin. Is that correct?
I was unable to locate any gasoline in the living room due to the heavy destruction of the living room.
So you can't rule out the logical possibility that there was no gasoline in the living room other than Todd Stermer sweatpants. Fair?
Todd Stermer sweatpants were in the living room. Correct.
That wasn't the question. Other than Todd Stermer sweatpants, you can't rule out the logical possibility that there was no gasoline in the area of origin.
I cannot.
I know I said last question. I know I said it, Your Honor, but I just have one further area. All right. Like I said, famous last words. Thank you.
Did you employ a negative corpus analysis or however it's described in this case?
No,
Can you describe for the jury what that means, since we didn't really get into what it means?
negative corpus used to be used a lot in fire investigation improperly when a fire investigator would go to a house, didn't have any evidence or data of what started the fire and jumped to the conclusion, well, if I didn't find it, it must be this. It must be an incendiary fire. It must be accidental. That is improper. Now, it's typically the process of elimination is used by examining the data.
Thank you. And based on the evidence you collected, do we know whether or not Todd Stermer was in the area of origin?
We do.
And do we know whether or not his sweatpants were in the area of origin?
We do.
And those would be the sweatpants that again tested positive for gasoline.
Correct.
And we also, do we know if there was an open flame in the living room?
All the running the log in the fireplace, and statements from Linda Stermer and other.
Going on 2007, reviewed all of the evidence that may have been collected in this case.
I do not know if I've reviewed all of the evidence collected. I have reviewed a lot of the evidence.
Has there been any evidence brought to your attention that calls into question your opinion that this was an intentionally set fire?
No.
If it had, would you? Thank you. No further questions.
Mr. Miller.
Todd Stermer was certainly in the area of origin at the instant the fire started, do you believe?
Yes.
Linda Stermer was not in the area of origin at the instant of the fire starting, correct?
There's no evidence that she is.
And you found, based on your testimony, you found her to be credible, correct?
Objection, that's going to.
That's not, the jury decides credibility, not the witnesses.
Your Honor, if I may, he determined it as reliable. I'll say reliable.
I'm sustaining the objection.
You found her statement to be reliable because you depended on that.
I've sustained the objection. Move on.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions for you.
Are you done?
We are done, yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
Thank you.
Jury, your turn. Any questions of this witness? Okay, they're coming in.
He just flat out ignores the judge. I have never hated a lawyer as much as I hate this dude. He's rude. It's not his lawyering that I hate. He's rude. He's probably a good lawyer. He's just rude. Todd and Linda were the only ones there. And Todd was sure he was on her. Got no choice but to infer that an open flame from the fireplace Mirrored is frozen. Can you guys hear me?
Questions, Jay? So you get free water. And I have no objection from council, sir. Some taken on the gas can left in the front yard, collected at 1:40 January 8.
I did not collect any. I just collected the can.
Any evidence of landline and line?
Locate any, but I also was wasn't specifically looking for telephone communications during the excavation.
Do you know what happened to the container that
StreamYard, StreamYard. Why are you doing this to me?
for excavating the site?
Referred to as a toy boat. I have never seen it.
For this specific investigation, did you already indict?
No,
Do you believe investigating a fire is best to do right away or days later?
that depends on the case, of course. In this case, investigating a scene at night, especially right after the active fire, because active fire, even if the fire's out, the scene is still steaming. There's a lot of steam. And it's just, I always prefer to do investigation in the daylight. I've done them days after. The sooner to the event possible is always better.
Is there ever a scenario in an investigation for you to return to the site? Reason for you to return, in your professional opinion?
This question is going to call for 18 years of experience since the fire. And
StreamYard hasn't done this in days. I thought we were over this.
since the fire, and and a lot of hindsight. So, and that's yes. In hindsight and more experience, I could have returned. It would have taken some more hoops to jump through to get there, but I could have.
When you, and we're told it could potentially be a crime scene, did you take into consideration while doing your investigation that Ms. Stermer's interview may not have been accurate?
I would have taken Linda Stermer's interview at just face value, not just take it at face value and not try to determine truthfulness or not truthfulness, because I wouldn't have enough information. So I would just take it at face value.
Okay, thank you. Counsel, any questions in light of the questions and answers?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Mueller?
Yes. You took Linda Stermer's statement at face value, correct?
Yes.
But her statement as to the origin of the fire also corroborated the physical evidence that you had found, correct?
Yes.
Which was the area of origin living room as opposed to the kitchen or dining room.
Correct.
So that was consistent, and physical evidence corroborated her statements, correct?
Correct.
And her statements corroborated your physical investigation.
Correct.
Now, certainly you were aware of this boat that Todd Stermer had been transferred in,
Yes.
because it's in your report.
Correct.
You just chose not to consider it, fair?
I did not look at it.
And you certainly could have requested that the gasoline can that was found in the front yard be tested for fingerprints. That's within your purview.
I could have, but I left that to the other detectives on the case.
And as to return to that question about returning to the scene, you certainly could have returned to the scene. Nothing prevented that.
Correct.
And are you telling us, based on now 18 more years of experience, you would have returned to take pictures of the excavation that you knew you had to take before?
No, I never said that. I would return to document more evidence.
Okay. You would have, I'm sorry.
I would have returned probably with Jim Shinsky.
You would have returned to document more evidence, but you knew in 2007, as a 6-year veteran, you need to document evidence.
Yes.
And a digital camera is simply just pushing a button.
Correct.
You took 138 pictures, right?
Correct.
But again, as you said, you simply forgot.
Objection, Your Honor, has been asked.
Has been asked.
And I'm going to question, thank you.
And you still done?
Yes.
Mr. Blair. Jury, do you have any other questions of this witness? Okay, I've got a hand going up. I think one. Objection from counsel. Did you note any fuel in the cans in the shed?
I did not.
Thank you. Questions, any questions, lawyers, in light of that?
No.
Okay. Thank you. Any more from the jury? Nope. Okay, thank you, sir. You're all done. And is he excused from his subpoena obligation? Excused? Agreed, counsel? To excuse him? Thank you, sir. You're all done.
Now
And
run,
Ms. Siderman?
run, and don't look back.
To the stand, please.
Excuse to read orders, yes.
Ooh, I like her hair.
Thank you. Ma'am, if you raise your right hand, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay, please have a seat. And then you can move that microphone right up to your mouth so the jury can hear you.
Okay.
And if you could start by telling us your full name and spelling the last, please.
Cynthia Deloach, Deloach.
Thank you, Ms. Siderman.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Deloach, you don't have to tell me your exact address, but where do you live? What city or township?
Lawrence,
How long have you lived there?
since 1980.
And did you, while living in Lawrence, have an opportunity to know who Todd Stermer was?
In passing, like at the gas station where I had worked, I had seen him there. I also worked at the school, so sporting events, things like that. I knew of him.
Knew of him?
Yes.
And did you know Linda Stermer?
In the same way. Yes.
Had you seen them at school?
Yes. Mhm.
And were you familiar with their children?
Yes.
And did you have children in school at the time?
My children were older than them, but my nephew was very close to one of the boys. So yes, I had seen him in numerous places.
And so when you say one of the boys, you mean one of the Stermer boys?
Yes. Yes.
Do you recall where you were working on January 7th of 2007?
Yes, I was at the Marathon gas station in Lawrence.
Right there in Lawrence?
Yes.
And what was your position at that time?
I was the cashier there.
And how long did you work there?
A total of 18 years, but I think at the fire time, it wasn't, maybe 5 or 6.
Okay.
So,
And you brought up at the time of the fire, do you remember the day of the fire?
yes, I do.
Why do you remember the day of the fire?
I just remember the fact we're a small town and I worked that morning. My husband and I had taken our son to the department coming down Red Arrow. We got to like Red Arrow and 681, and then we pulled over for the Bangor Fire Department also that were coming into town.
And later on, did you learn then what those fire trucks were going to?
Yes, but when they were coming into town, I had said to my husband, I said, we should follow them because I was worried about my parents. They were old, and it was always a big thing when we heard a siren in the family. We always called my mom and dad to make sure they were okay. So we were heading towards their direction, and the fire trucks went around the curve. So we just took the big block and went home because it didn't go in the direction of my parents.
You just wanted to make sure they weren't
Yeah.
pulling into your parents' driveway.
Yes,
And you remember that day.
yes, ma'am.
And at some point, did you become aware that the fire trucks were going to the Stermer residence?
When we went around the curve, you could see them heading down 215, but I didn't know what driveway they were pulling into, no. But later in the evening, through my sister-in-law, is how we had heard of the fire.
Have you been to the Lawrence gas station recently?
Yes.
Is it set up the same as it was when you
No.
worked there?
No, it's totally different now. It's all opposite. Like, it's bigger. The entrance is at the other end now. The register is at the other end of the station. So everything is completely different.
Is it kind of flip-flop?
Yes, yes.
And what was your typical shift that you would work on like a Sunday?
7 till noon.
Do you recall if you saw Linda Stermer? I'm sorry, I thought you were stopping me for a moment. Do you recall if you saw Linda Stermer the day that you were working on January 7th of 2007?
Yes, I do.
And that would have been before you saw the fire trucks then later
Oh,
that
yeah.
evening?
Yes, long before that.
During your shift?
Yes.
Tell me what you remember about seeing Ms. Stermer at the gas station that day.
I remember her pulling into the station because she had made an outside purchase at the pump. So the reason I knew it was outside because it makes a dinging inside and we have to clear the register and turn the pump on. And I remember her pulling in like on the west side of the parking lot and then pulling up to pump 3, which would put her on the south side of the pump right next to the building. So my view was right out the window to that.
So you had a clear view of
Yes, ma'am. With the old station,
memory.
yes.
with the old station, and you said you recalled her, you knew she was at pump 3,
Yes.
and you had to look out before you turned the pump on, is that right?
Yes, because the lady that owned the station was always very, you had to check first in case a credit card didn't work or something. You would know who the person was if they were to like pull away when they were done.
It was a safety feature.
Yes, yes.
And tell me what you saw when you looked outside that day.
She had, I'm not as positive if it was like my mom's old car and she had a Blazer. So you turned the glass and then you lifted up the top.
Where are you talking about where the glass and the handle would be located?
In the very back of the vehicle.
So in the rear of the vehicle?
Yes.
And you described it as like a glass with a handle?
Right, and you would just, pick it up and then the window would go up to the top.
Kind of like where the trunk would be, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay, so you described, you saw Ms. Stermer then opening up that glass
yes,
and lifting,
yes.
and then what did you see?
Her putting the hose into the car, not into the gas pump, into the gas tank, into the back window.
So when you say not into the gas tank, you mean the tank of the car.
Correct.
And you distinctly remember that.
Yes, ma'am.
And at that point, you couldn't see what she was pumping into, is that correct?
No, I could not.
But you distinctly saw her putting the hose through the half window into the vehicle.
Yes, ma'am.
And do you recall what you saw after that?
No, because I'd gone about what else I was doing. She was done out there and then she had came back into the station though after that.
So
I was
when
wrong.
one transaction is done, are you alerted at that time?
Yes, it dings that it's all done.
So then did you hear that ding?
Yes,
And did you see her at that point?
I saw her outside of the station.
And then what did she do after that?
She came into the station then.
And then what did she do in the station?
She had made a comment. I remember we both were speaking to each other about the fact that she was happy that the lady that owned the station carried things in the store that, like breakfast food, food of any type or whatever. And she purchased a few things and then she was done.
Do you recall what she purchased?
No. Mm-mm.
But you remember she was on pump
I'm
3.
going to show you what's been marked, what's actually been admitted is People's Exhibit 30-1 and 30-2.
Okay.
Do you recognize these items?
Yes, this is register tapes that when they're empty, when we're done with them, they go underneath the counter in a box. Yes.
And do you recognize the flat piece of paper, which is then 30-2?
Yes, it's a receipt.
I'm going to go ahead and put that receipt up on the screen. And I'm going to have you then describe the receipt and what we're looking at.
So I was wrong. It was in her car when
So
she
I'm going to start at
pumped
the
gas
top of the
into it.
receipt, so you can either use it from the screen or from what you have in front of you.
Okay.
Can you tell us what we're looking at the top of the receipt here, this top section?
The top section is a purchase of gas that someone had made for $10 up top at the very top.
So when you say at the very top, you're talking the $10, you're
Yes.
talking the 10, the number 10 right up here?
Yes,
Okay. And how do you know that that's gas?
because it says unleaded fuel pump 2.
Unleaded fuel pump
Yes,
2.
zero, number sign 02. So it's, mine is higher than yours. I mean, mine shows more than what's showing up.
Oh,
there.
I'm sorry. So you're
Okay.
you're higher.
Yes.
I apologize. So that is a different transaction on pump 2. Is that correct?
Yes,
I apologize. I was probably confusing you.
that's
So I'm
okay.
going to have you go beneath that $10 and then
Okay.
just go ahead and then start telling me then what is beneath the $10, which I'm going to say, which would be starting at this line. If you could then read that to me. Like, just explain that portion.
Okay, the pump 3.
Yes, the pump 3 part.
Okay, it says outdoor sale, pump number 3. It gives the date of 1/7/07 at 10:07. And it was an authorization that the pump was cleared and that the credit card had been used. And then it also gives the approval code for your, the approval of the credit card.
So is the approval code this long number here that I've got my dot on? Is that the approval code?
No, the approval number is 0075 or 7598 in the amount of 1101.
I'm going to have you show me on the receipt where we're looking at here.
Okay, so here's the authorization and here's the approval code right here. Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Blair, can you go down farther? I'm not far enough down. That's why. Okay, so the authorization code you're looking at is right here, the
yes,
007598, is that correct?
yes,
And then it says the outdoor sale pump 3, is that correct?
yes,
And this is the date you're referring to of January 7th of 07 at 10:07, is that correct?
yes.
Now, at the time, were you aware if that 10:07 was the correct time?
No, it wasn't, because when the time changed in the fall, Sue, our owner, did not manually change the register.
So it would have been an hour off?
Right.
Would the correct time have been, do you know what the correct time?
9:07,
9:07.
yes.
Okay. And so this shows the outdoor sale pump, the approval code. Where's the amount then for the outdoor sale?
It's amount 1101, right next to the approval code.
Oh,
See, amount 1101.
Right here, right where my dot is?
Yes,
And so that would have been the amount of the outdoor sale, 1101.
Yes.
Okay. And then if we continue down, and you, what is this long number? The account number?
the account number of the credit cards used.
Okay. And then if we then move down a little bit farther, we see taxable, non-taxable, non-taxable, non-taxable. What is that?
Those were the items that were purchased in the store.
In the store?
Yes.
And that would have been then the numbers we're looking at here, $1.29, $2.29, $1.59, $2.49, correct?
Yes,
And that would have been a total then of $7.74.
correct.
And you said this is inside.
Yes,
And how do you know it's inside?
because I rang it up inside with her card, in the inside sale.
And then if I go down to the next section where it says MasterCard, can you then describe what we're looking at here with these names and numbers?
Right, it says the MasterCard was used. It was Todd J. Stermer's card, the account number that is on the card, and then it also has the approval that it went through on that.
Would that be that authorization number?
That would be the account, yes, ma'am,
Right here, the 007233?
yes,
Okay. And then that also has the date and time?
yes,
And what's that?
10:09, but it would be 9:09,
909. And same date of January 7th, is that correct?
yes.
Now, do you know what non-taxable and taxable items are?
Well, non-taxable would be anything you could eat.
So non-taxable then would be anything you could eat. Could
Right.
be a candy bar, could be eggs, could be anything.
Right,
Okay.
right,
And non-tax, and then taxable would be anything you can't eat?
correct.
Okay. And I want to ask you about these numbers. So the long number I asked you about up here,
Yes,
the 55809, several numbers,
yes,
is that the same number that we're looking at then on the indoor portion?
yes, it is. It's the same credit card used.
Same credit card used outside as used inside.
Yes.
Anything else on this receipt that would be pertinent then to that indoor sale or that outdoor sale that I'm missing?
No, I don't think so.
And did you see anybody else with Linda Stermer that morning?
No, there was not.
She was by herself. Is that
Yes,
correct?
yes.
Nobody came to you right away, or let me rephrase that. Did somebody come to you immediately after the fire to talk to you about this transaction?
Not immediately, no.
No. How did it come about that you became involved?
There was a person that always shopped in the gas station, Deputy Wydick, and Tim would always ask me, did someone talk to you yet? And I said, no, whenever they need to talk to me, they'll find me. I would tell him all the time.
I'm going to object to that. It's hearsay.
Objection hearsay.
I'm not offering for the truth of the matter, only that how she became involved in the investigation, Your Honor.
I'll allow it to explain her late statement.
So don't tell me maybe exactly what deputy, you said Wydick?
Yes.
Yes, so he would come into the store,
Mm-hmm.
he would bring it up to you?
Yes.
And at some point then, did you call somebody, or how did you become involved after you talked to him?
I came home one day and there was a card on my front door to get a hold of Mr. Maziowski at the Sheriff's Department.
And so did you do that at that time?
Yes, I had called him as soon as I came in the house and had that card.
Were you expecting that call?
No. Mm-mm.
Did you want to be involved?
No. Mm-mm.
But yet you called Detective Maziowski?
Yes, and he asked me if we could meet together. He had asked me to come that day, but I couldn't come that day. I went the next afternoon.
And then you explained to him what you explained to this jury today?
Yes.
I have no further questions for this witness, Your Honor.
Ms. Deloach,
Yes.
how long have you stated that you, first of all, you stated that you have worked at this Marathon, is it a convenience store or is it a gas station?
It is both. It's a convenience store, gas station. It is a bigger convenience store now that has a new owner.
And the location of it was where?
On West St. Joseph Street in Lawrence.
And you stated that it has been completely redesigned.
Mhm.
Okay. In the 18 years that you worked as a cashier at the Marathon service station, have you ever seen anyone pull up to the gas pump, get out of their car, open up the trunk of their car?
Yes.
Have you ever seen anyone pull up to the pump in an SUV, get out of the car, open up the back hatch of the SUV?
Yes.
Okay. On multiple occasions, right?
Yes.
Didn't find anything suspicious about that either, would you?
No.
Okay. Now, on the date of January the 7th of 2007, what was the weather like?
It was a little bit chilly in the morning when I went into work. It was winter time still, so I would say cold.
Was it raining?
No, not in the morning.
Had
No.
it snowed? Was it snowing?
No, we had had snow prior, but it wasn't snowing that morning, no.
Was the sun out?
I think it kind of was a little bit.
Um, you wear glasses?
Yes. Hmm.
In 2007, were you wearing glasses?
I don't remember if I had my glasses. I think I probably did. Yes.
Do
Yes.
you know whether or not you was wearing your glasses?
Um,
That day on January the 7th of 2007.
no, I probably wasn't because I didn't need them as much back then as I do now.
Do you know what your vision is in 2007?
Um, no, pretty well, I guess. I don't know.
You didn't know what your vision was?
No.
Did you have to wear your glasses to read, or
Like I said, I didn't wear glasses as much back then as I do now. I just didn't. My vision was probably pretty good back then.
but you had to have glasses?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, did you know Miss Linda Stermer prior to January the 7th of 2007?
I knew of her, yes.
How did you know of her?
Like I said, we lived in a small town. I also worked a full-time job at the school. So I've seen them at sporting events, school events, in-town events, you know.
Okay. Just as common residents of the area,
Right.
right?
Not close friends. I didn't know her on a personal basis. No,
Okay. You've never been to her house?
no,
Okay. Never met her husband, or
no.
had you?
At the gas station, I have him and the boys used to rent movies there quite a bit.
Okay. And what all does the gas station sell?
Gas, alcohol, groceries, chips, you know.
Lottery tickets?
Yes. Mhm.
Were you at the time part of the custodian of records there at the gas station?
Could you repeat that?
I say, did you have anything to do as the custodian of the records at the gas station?
No, I did not.
You did not.
No.
And you stated that the time that you referenced to on the receipt that was shown on the screen, that this time was 9:03, but you stated that that was, or is it 10:03, 10:06:55? But you stated that wasn't the correct time,
Correct.
and that was because the owner didn't want to change.
She manually, when the time changed, she manually did not remember to change it in the register.
So it was an hour earlier
Yes.
that you would say that your observation of what you saw of Miss Stermer would
Yes.
have been 9:06. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, did Miss Stermer come inside the store and have a conversation with you about any purchasing of any other items other than the gas?
She came in and purchased some items in the store, yes.
Did she have a conversation with you?
She just said she was just picking, it was very nice of the lady that owned the station, that she carried grocery items there. It was very small talk.
Okay. So the purchase of the gasoline, was it purchased inside the store or was it purchased at the pump?
That was purchased at the pump.
Was it purchased at the pump?
Yes.
With the same credit card that the
Yes.
other items inside the store was purchased with?
Yes.
Okay. Now, where were you? Well, let me just go back. After Ms. Stermer purchased the items and left, you didn't have any reason to suspect anything about any unusual activity that occurred at that pump by Miss Linda Stermer, right?
No, I did not.
Absolutely nothing that would give you any reason to think that anything was done that would be suspicious, right?
No,
She was just a common customer like all you other customers, right?
correct?
And you heard about a fire later on that evening, right?
Yes.
But you didn't know where the fire was, right?
Not when I saw the fire trucks. No, I did not.
Okay. And when did you find out where the fire was?
When I spoke with my sister-in-law, who is my nephew is a friend of one of the Stermer boys. And that's when I found out. It was much late into the evening.
Okay. And did you make a statement that you had seen Miss Stermer earlier that day at the service station, at the gas station?
I don't think I did.
You didn't?
I don't think so.
That wouldn't have been something that would have caught your attention, the fact that you had seen the mother of one of the sons whose house had been burned, that you had seen
When I was on the phone with my sister-in-law, I said I had seen them in the morning. I'd seen them in the day, but I said, that's horrible. I mean, it was enough out of sadness. I had seen,
Yeah. But my question is that in a small town, you hear the fire trucks, you later on find out that the fire was at a location of a home of someone that you didn't know real well, but you knew them as town residents,
right?
because of the school activities, and that you had also seen one of the parents at your location where you worked that morning. So when your sister called you and told you,
Your Honor, is this a question?
well,
I mean,
yes, it's going to be a question, Judge.
Very long testimonial here.
Well,
We
it's
just asked
going to be a
the
question, Judge.
If you could get to the question. please.
Did you tell your sister that you had seen Miss Stermer earlier that day at the store?
She just answered that she did say that. She said, how horrible she saw. She already answered the question.
Did she answer the question, Judge?
I'll let you ask that last question again.
Yes. That's the question.
Yeah, just the question, your last question about, did you tell?
Did you tell your sister that you had seen Miss Stermer earlier that
I
day?
said to my sister-in-law, oh my God, I had seen her this morning. Yes.
You
And I
did?
said, what a horrible tragedy.
Yeah. And you told her that you'd seen her?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. That's all I want to know. Now, who was the other person that you stated that you had a conversation with about Miss Stermer?
I don't understand what he's getting at.
Did you have a conversation with someone else after you talked to your sister about Miss Stermer coming to the gas station?
No,
You didn't?
no.
Okay. How did you wind up having a card at your home from Detective Maciasi?
Probably from Detective Wydick.
Okay. Detective Wiley?
Or a policeman Wydick. I don't know. A deputy, I should
Did
say.
you have a conversation with him?
Not that day, no.
But I just said, did you have a conversation?
I wouldn't really call it a conversation. He would just come in and ask me if I spoke to anybody from the sheriff's department. I would say, no, Tim, no, I haven't.
Let me ask you this. Was it a common practice for this detective to come, this deputy to come into the gas station and ask you had a conversation with anybody from the police department or the sheriff's department?
It was common for Tim to say anything he wanted to people. He was impressed.
Okay. And being an open person, he just asked you, did you know what?
He asked me if I was in contact with anyone, and I said, if they need me, they know where I'm at, is all we ever spoke.
Why would he ask you if you had been in contact with anyone?
I don't know.
One moment. That does call for speculation. I'll sustain.
Did he tell you why he was asking you if you had been in contact with anyone?
No.
And who was the anyone he was talking about? If you know.
This calls for speculation. I'll sustain the objection.
Why does it always sound like they're accusing the witnesses of stuff?
And at some point in time, you stated that you received a card, you had a card at your house,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
In your door
Yes.
from Detective Macias.
Correct.
And you contacted Detective Macias.
After I received the card, yes, I did.
What did you have to go and have an interview with Detective Macias?
Yes.
Where?
At the sheriff's department at his office.
So what did you tell Detective Macias?
I answered all the questions that he had for me.
He already had questions for
Well,
you?
he asked me, did I work that day? I said yes. He asked how long I was at the gas station that day. He asked if I had waited on Mrs. Stermer. I said yes. So, yes, I guess the basic questions he needed answered.
And that was it?
Yes.
You didn't tell Detective Maciaski that you saw Miss Stermer putting gasoline in any other part of the car other than the gas tank?
Whatever questions he asked me, I answered to him. I don't remember exactly what questions word for word he asked, but the gas was discussed that day.
He said what?
I said the gas was discussed that day. He asked me if she purchased gas, and I said yes.
Okay. And did you tell him that you saw anything unusual about her purchasing the gasoline?
I just told him that she pulled up to the pump. She opened up her back window just like I had said, and she put the hose into the vehicle and started pumping into the vehicle.
In the vehicle?
Yes, not through the gas tank, into the back window of the vehicle.
And you saw that?
Yes, through the window.
Where were you at in the gas station?
Right in front. There was the whole front of the gas station was windows.
Do you recall testifying in a prior hearing in this case?
Yes, I do.
You were asked in a prior hearing.
Your Honor, I'd ask that he ask this in a proper form. He wants to ask if she remembers testifying and she needs to have her memory refreshed before he just starts going on to the question.
I just asked her, did she recall testifying in a prior hearing, Judge? And if she would just let me, you recall testifying in a prior hearing in this case?
Yes, I do.
You recall testifying that the gas was being pumped in the car?
Through the window, I said yes.
You don't recall it?
Pardon me?
Do you recall testifying at a prior hearing in this case, right?
Yes.
And you were asked, You didn't actually see gas being pumped into anything, did you?
I did not see a container or a can, no.
I'm sorry, you said you didn't see a container
A
or
container or a gas
or
can,
can.
yes.
Your answer was
Something.
no, right?
Pardon me?
Your answer was no, right? You
Yes.
didn't see,
No,
did you see Ms. Stermer making any other type of moves other than just standing there by the car?
no, I did not,
You did not?
no. She was just standing there.
And you never saw a container?
No, I did not.
And after she purchased the gasoline, did she come back into the store
Yes, she did.
and purchase some other items?
Yes.
And you only had one interview with Detective Maciowski and this, is that right?
Yes, we did meet at another time, and that was about going over this a little bit. He was asking me to explain that to him, and he came to the gas station to have me explain that to him.
Explain this receipt to him?
Yes, to break it down for him.
You didn't have the receipt when you went to his office?
We didn't talk about the receipt at the office, no.
So you didn't even talk about the amount of gasoline that she had purchased or the items that she had purchased?
We had talked about her purchasing gasoline and items, but not a specific amount or anything. We did not talk about this part, no.
Okay. Do you know if there was a surveillance camera at the service station?
I don't think that we used to have a old VHS tapes that Sue used to use, but I don't know if it was working, if it was even still in working order or used then at that time. No, I don't.
You don't recall if it was operating on that day?
That has been asked. and answered.
Did Mr. Maciowski ask you for any surveillance tapes?
No, he did not. He didn't ask me for any of this kind of stuff. He dealt with that with the owner.
Do you know if the owner,
Objection, Your Honor. She's just speculating.
Oh, I haven't heard his question yet.
I could have said, do you know the owner's name, Judge?
I'm waiting to hear
yes.
your question.
Do you know if the owner provided any type of surveillance tape to Mr. Maciowski? If you know.
I don't know any of that, sir.
But you had seen a surveillance tape there at the assistant that was installed at the service station, right?
We used to just see the VCR tapes in the back room. They weren't, I don't know if they were used or not.
But you knew that there was a VCA system.
Yes, yes.
Was it operating that day?
I don't know.
Answered. She said she doesn't know.
I have just a second, Judge.
I mean, a quick conference.
Do you know what the price of gasoline was in 2007?
The receipt here says $2.16, 0.9 a gallon. Maybe? I don't know.
Is your answer you don't know? Or is it $2?
Just what the receipt says, I said.
And you said that she purchased $11 worth of gasoline, right?
1101.
Yes. Okay. And do you recall when you was actually by year that you were contacted by Detective Maciowski?
Back in June of 09, I think it was.
June of 09.
Yes.
2 years later. Is that right?
Well, June.
Do you recall from a previous hearing that you stated that you went to the police and told Deputy Wyrick that you thought you might need to talk to the police?
No, like I said, Tim would come in the gas station and ask if I had spoke to them. I never went to him.
You
A
never went to
question
him?
asked and
No,
answered.
no.
Why?
But Detective Wyrick, or Deputy Wyrick, that would have also been 2 years after the fire of January the 7th of 2007, right? Approximately 2 years. And
When
some.
I spoke with Mr. Wydick?
Yes.
No, Tim would ask that all the time coming in the gas station. And that was right after the fire, to numerous times when he would come in there. I mean, like I said, I did not go to him. He came to me.
When you say he came to you, he was just coming in, as you stated, that because he was just
A customer.
an outgoing person, that he would just make a conversation.
Yes, he would come in for his
That's
free
what
coffee.
she
and
said.
stand there and ask
Free
questions. Yes, they would always get free coffee.
And you were just basically engaging with him in conversation about, have you heard anything about this fire? Or have you heard anything about the Stermer's fire? He would just kind of open up a conversation periodically when he came in with you. Is that correct?
Like that, something like that.
Yeah.
Not exactly, but
Right. Yeah.
you had to know Tim.
So it pretty much was kind of like a information gathering conversation, right? If you heard anything, if you knew anything, right?
No, I think it was more or less, has anybody talked to you? And I would tell him, no, Tim, but if they need to find me, they will find me. And I would just leave it go at that. I did not want to be in that,
Need you or find you in
Yes.
reference to just
To speak
because
to me,
Ms. Stermer
yes.
purchased some gasoline, right?
Just to speak to me, yes.
Yes, yes.
It does.
And then Detective Maciowski waits until 2.5 years, and then he contacts you with a card at your residence. Is that correct?
He left a card at my residence. Yes, he did.
But that's not her fault. Quit grilling her like she did something wrong. Well, they do that. The cop comes in and hangs out, and then they have like extra security for the brief period of time it takes them to drink their coffee.
Mr.
My dad was
Detective Mazias, he contacted you in June of '09, right?
Yes,
So when defense counsel said that was 2 years, it was actually a year and a half.
correct.
And then when defense counsel said it was 2.5 years, it was actually a year and a half.
Yes.
So was that confusing?
No, not really.
You knew it was still June
Yes,
of '09.
right.
And Tim came in the gas station a lot,
Yes.
regular customer,
Uh-huh,
regular of Lawrence.
right. Whether he was working or not, he was in there all the time.
And at the time of the day of the fire, you just knew the fire happened.
Correct.
You didn't know any details about the fire.
No,
You didn't know what had happened.
no,
You didn't know any details of the investigation.
no, I did not.
All you knew at that time is that Ms. Stermer came in and bought $11 worth of gas and bought some breakfast or some groceries.
Correct.
So you said that owner, I believe you called her Sue,
Yes,
had the whole front window was all glass.
yes,
And was that part of your security policy of watching out there and turning on the pump when it dinged?
right.
And I think you
yes,
had testified that it was then something you did to make sure you knew who it was in case they drove away.
right, because she was getting to the point where if you didn't pay attention to what was going on, people drove off with gas, she would always tell us, you're going to start paying for that.
So then you started watching.
paying more attention.
And you were asked the question, have you seen others pump things into their trunk areas or their rear of their gas before, or the rear of their vehicle before?
Yes, but most people, when they would come in, they would always lay like their gas cans on the ground and pump them in, and then wipe them off and then put them back in their vehicle. But yes, I did see some people pull up that way.
And one last question. When you then saw that ding and looked out and saw Ms. Stermer with the hose into the blazer, into the trunk area, did you continue maintaining constant surveillance until she came into the store?
No, I did not.
And what did you do then once you saw her?
I wiped up, like I said, she came in, the pump cleared, she started pumping. I did see how she started pumping with the hose in the back window. And then I just waited a few seconds, and then I just went around the counter to the right side, and I was wiping off the coffee counter.
So you weren't staring at her the
No,
whole time?
no.
Once you saw her pumping into the trunk, you started doing your work there.
Right,
And then she came in at a later time.
right. As soon as the pump dinged, I knew she was done, and then, she ended up coming in.
When did it ding? Would it ding when
When
somebody
you
hung it
hang
up?
the nozzle up, yes.
So you didn't see if she then put any gas into her vehicle,
No, I did not.
but you wouldn't know if she put any gas into her vehicle after she put it into the back of the trunk.
Correct.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Just want to clarify, Ms. Deloach. In January of 2010, you testified in this matter, and you recall that?
Yes.
Okay. And I asked earlier so I can get a clarification. You stated that you didn't actually see gas being pumped into anything, did you? And your answer was no. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I did not see a container or a gas can, no.
Okay. Okay. And what we don't know is whether there was any gasoline being pumped at the time Linda was looking in the back of her vehicle. Isn't that true? And your answer was, I guess I don't. Do you recall that testimony?
Yes.
And do you further recall, and the question was, no guesses?
Your Honor, I would ask that he ask her if she remembers it and he needs to refresh her memory versus reading transcript.
Get to the question, just focus on the question that was asked and her answer if it's prior and consistent statement.
The question that was asked, you cannot say under oath that any gas was being pumped when Linda looked into the back of the vehicle. Isn't that true? And your answer was yes. You recall that testimony?
I remember her pumping gas into the vehicle is what I said, yes.
Okay. And the next question was, you never saw a container that day. Isn't that true?
Yes, I
And
told
the answer was
that.
yes, right?
I never seen a container.
Yes. Now, what are you talking about when the prosecutor asked you about this ding? What was the ding that you referred to?
When the pump is finished and they hang the nozzle up, it dings in the inside.
It dings inside?
Yes, yes. So then you know they're done at the pump.
Do you know what did? What did you say? When it dings, it means what?
It means the pump is done.
Okay.
They hung the nozzle up.
Right.
Yes, and then it goes ding.
And that's heard inside.
It's from the register sound.
Okay. Did you tell Detective Maciowski that you didn't see any container?
Yes, I did.
You told him you did not see a container.
Yes, I did. I said I did not see. I saw the hose through the back window. I did not see it being pumped into a container.
And if gas was $2 a gallon, and she purchased, you stated $11 worth of gasoline, right?
1101.
Okay. How many gallons was that?
I'm not sure exactly how much it was because I don't remember if it was unleaded. Was it regular? You know, I don't. Well, 4 point some gallons.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
And again, you didn't maintain constant surveillance, so you don't know if she then pumped anything into her vehicle.
Correct.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Kelly, are you done? Okay. Anything else you good?
No further questions.
And jury, do you have any questions of her? Okay, I've got questions coming in. Questions from the jury, no objection from the lawyers. When did you interview, well, I think this was asked, but I'll ask again. I think it's crossed off, but when did you interview with Maciowski?
It was in June of 2009.
When did Maciowski go to the gas station to clarify regarding preparation for the hearing?
I don't exactly remember the day, but I do know it was when the gas station was with the new owner, so I don't remember, because I remember going in the back room with him when we did it that day, so I don't know exactly when.
Have you ever seen Todd or Linda Stermer fill a gas can while it was still in one of their vehicles before? Or did they commonly take it out and fill the cans on the ground outside the car?
I don't
If you know.
remember really, like, Todd usually came in and rented movies with the boys. I never really waited on him with gas, so I don't know.
Were you the only employee working that morning?
Yes, I was.
Okay, thank you. Council, any questions of her?
So one of the jurors' questions was, when did you meet with Detective Maziowski at the Marathon Station for preparation? Was that actually for preparation?
No, it was just, he was having me explain how the register, how this register tape is read.
When you went to the second interview then to go over the receipt?
Yes, yes.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Kelly, any more?
Mr. Deloach, you stated that Detective Maciowski came to the station and it was after the new owners had acquired the station?
It was when the transition was different, yes. So it was when the new owner, so it was probably in, I would say probably 08, probably sometime in 09 when he came in to talk, because I'd already spoke with him once. So it was after that.
So did you speak to him in 09 and he came to the station in 09? Or did
I
you
spoke with him at the sheriff's department in 09, yes.
in 09, the very first time?
Yes,
And then he came to the station and the station had been redesigned
yes.
when he came to the station.
And I don't know what year that was, but I just know he had the register tape apart, and he was trying to have me explain to him how to read that. To explain it in his terms, you know what I mean? Like the amount and, how that was used.
Did y'all talk about any?
No, I was just showing him about the tape.
Nothing about the exact amount of gallons of gasoline that was purchased?
No,
right?
I just explained to him how to read the tape.
And did Detective Maciowski ask you anything about the VCH surveillance that you all had at the?
That was never discussed, no.
Never
Not
was
with me,
discussed?
no. That was something probably with the owner he did, not me.
Okay. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor, nothing further.
Jury, any other questions of her? None? May she be excused from her subpoena obligations?
I would ask that you please be excused, Your Honor.
Thank you. Defense agree?
Yes, Your Honor.
User, okay. Thank you, ma'am. You're all done. Okay. Council, we'll take our afternoon break now. Okay. Okay, so jury, will take about a 15-minute break, and remember the rules.
How many witnesses? Jeez. This is number 23 for the prosecution. Her daughter hired to get her out of jail, hired a fire investigator expert. I don't know if he's going to testify in the trial or not. But he said there's no way she poured gas on Todd without getting any
We're
on
back on the
her.
record. Everyone's here but the jury. Any matters to address before we bring in the jurors?
I know, Your Honor.
Anything?
None, Your Honor.
Okay, bring in the jury.
I still don't see a way to prove she started the fire.
Welcome back, jury. Ms. Zeiderbean?
Thank you, Your Honor. People call Steve Wilson to the stand, please.
If you raise your right hand, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please have a seat, and once you're settled in, I'll move that microphone close to your mouth and tell us your full name and spell the last, please.
Stephen Willison, Willison.
Thank you. Ms. Zeiderbean?
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Willison, what was your occupation in, actually, let me just start there. What is your current occupation?
I'm an attorney.
And how long have you been an attorney?
What just happened?
Now,
Not just.
I do see that those are the last two pages of Exhibit 36.
So, Your Honor, then I would withdraw the new number of 37. We'll go ahead and just not to confuse the record, we'll keep it as Exhibit 30.
What just happened? That was weird.
Policy of insurance and everything.
We're not that far behind it, but it skipped up to live. We missed the beginning of his testimony.
Recorded
They are. There's a court reporter.
and under oath is?
Sure.
Welcome back, jury. Ms. Zeiderbean?
Thank you, Your Honor. People call Steve Wilson to the stand, please.
That's where I'm having a problem.
If you raise your right hand, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please have a seat, and once you're settled in, I'll move that microphone close to your mouth and tell us your full name and spell the last, please.
Stephen Willison, Willison.
Thank you. Ms. Zeiderbean?
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Willison, what was your occupation in, actually, let me just start there. What is your current occupation?
I'm an attorney
And how long have you been an attorney?
since 1990.
And in 2007, were you working as an attorney?
I was.
And in what capacity?
I had my own law firm that did primarily work for insurance companies on property coverage matters.
And so when you say you did work for an insurance company, what was your primary role then with that company?
So we would help insurance companies determine their legal rights under the policy of insurance and determining whether or not a loss was covered typically, which most of my cases involved whether there was an intentional loss, which would not be covered by the policy of insurance, or if during the claims presentment process, there was a material misrepresentation, which would also avoid the policy. So we would quarterback the investigation and the people, and then we would do what's called an examination under oath a lot of times. Then we'd pass our recommendations on to the company, and then they would make their own decision on the claim.
Can you explain to the jury what an examination under oath is?
Sure, it's a lot like, you may have heard of depositions, but it's a lot like that, although the court rules don't apply. There's a provision in the policy of insurance, and every policy of insurance, that says you have to participate in this process called examination under oath, where we get to ask you questions under oath with a court reporter present, and have you give us your side of the story, explain things that we need to know about. We get into some of the details of what was going on before, during, and after the loss. It's kind of their chance to present their side of the story to the insurance company, and it's our chance to find out some details that maybe we don't yet in the investigation.
And are these examinations under oath, are they recorded?
They are. There's a court reporter present.
And then are they transcribed?
And they are transcribed.
And did you have an opportunity to interview Ms. Linda Stermer?
Yes, we did an examination under oath in 2 parts with her.
In 2 parts? And
Yes.
when do you recall the dates of those?
I believe the first one was in February of 07. I believe it was January 7, 07 was the fire. I think February 07, we did the first one. I think the second one was October of 07.
And both of those were transcribed?
They were.
I'm going to show you what's been marked People's Proposed Exhibit 35 and 36. If you could just take a moment and look through those and see if you recognize those.
These appear to be the transcripts of those examinations under oath, although these particular copies seem to have some redactions, some things that were apparently agreed to be taken out of them.
And so other than the redactions, the transcripts then are, there haven't been altered or changed other than those redactions from your original transcripts?
It would not appear so.
And Your Honor, at this time, I would move to admit People's Exhibit.
No objections, Your Honor.
Thank you. And as part, I want to, as part of your interviews in February and October, were you able to work with Ms. Stermer and draw out a map?
I believe particularly in the first one, we did ask, as she was describing where things were, both on the property and in the house, we had her draw out maps. I believe I had her sign them and made them exhibits to that examination.
So they're actually an exhibit then to those transcripts?
Correct.
And they're included in those transcripts?
Yes.
So I'm just going to show you a copy. And if you could just verify if that's been included in those transcripts and if that's a fair and accurate representation of what is in those transcripts.
Yes, I don't think I saw the exhibits in the binder, but yes, this was part of the transcript. This exhibit 4, and the EUO exhibit 3. 3 was the one that we had her sign on the inside of the house, and EUO exhibit 4 was the one that we had her draw of the property, driveway, things like that.
Your Honor, just to be safe, I'm going to mark this then as People's Proposed Exhibit 37, just in case it's not included in those binders. And at this time, I would move then to admit the map that's included as part of the transcript, but we'll read it separately. And there are 2 pages.
Now,
No objections.
I do see that those are the last 2 pages of exhibit 36.
So, Your Honor, then I would withdraw the new number of 37. We'll go ahead and just not to confuse the record, we'll keep it as exhibit 36. It's just 2 pages out of exhibit 36. At this time, Your Honor, I'd ask for permission to publish the map to the jurors. And I do have, may the record reflect, I have 15 copies here, 1 for each juror as we're going through transcripts.
Okay.
And when you refer to an EUO, that's your examination under oath, is that correct?
Yes, EUO, examination under oath. So it's just a shorthand term of art in the industry.
And just to be clear, you had referred to this map then as an exhibit in your transcript, and then that is what that exhibit sticker is on that map.
Correct.
So not an exhibit sticker from today's hearing.
It is not, yeah, that is not a trial exhibit number. That was an EUO exhibit number. We had several documents that we collected during that process.
Thank you. So I'm going to have permission to public then the transcripts, Your Honor. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and then put these up. We're going to start out with the February 27th of 2007 transcript.
Sure.
We'll put that up on the screen. I'm going to start then, just have you verify the first page. You don't have to read the first page, but if you could just then verify the parties present and the date.
Sure. This occurred on February 27 of 2007. I was there. Mr. Jeff Getting was there, who was Linda Stermer's attorney. Rodney Thuma was a representative of the insurance company, was there, and the court reporter was Rebecca Kerr from Network Reporting.
I'm going to have you go to page 3, and I'm going to have you start about a quarter of the way down where it says Mr. Willison. And if you could just read to the jury from that statement down.
Line 10.
Yes, line 10 down.
My name is Stephen Willison, and I am the attorney for Farm Bureau Insurance. We're here today to take your examination under oath. That is a process by which you participate in the company's investigation of your claim and the events surrounding this loss. This is probably going to be part 1 because it's far too early to have any discussions about the details of your claim, but we did want to get together relatively quickly and talk about the details of the fire. Everything you say is being recorded and eventually will be turned into a typewritten transcript. So it's very important that all of your answers are with words. If you nod your head like you have done recently, or you say, or you point to something in a photograph, I may understand what you're saying, but there's no good way to type that. So from time to time, I may ask you to clarify.
I'll have you continue then through line 14 on the next page, which would be page 4.
Okay, whether you meant yes or no, or to describe what's very obviously what you're pointing at, so that we have a clean record. Okay, and then she responded, I understand. And then I went on. It's also important you understand that you're under oath today. So just like if we were in a courtroom, all the penalties of perjury apply, but maybe more relevant to your insurance claim, you need to understand that the policy of insurance says that if you were to even try to mislead the insurance company, that can be a reason to deny your claim and void your policy. Even if you were the world's worst liar and no one believed you for a second, just the fact that you tried is a reason to deny it. Okay? And she said yes.
And you said that in one of those statements that you thought it was far too early. Can you describe to the jury why you felt it was too early and why you were conducting it then in February and then again in October?
Sure. Obviously, we knew that this claim involved the loss of life and was a total loss fire and was probably going to be big and complicated. And so putting together a claim on a total loss fire can take some time when you have to, if you think about every t-shirt that's in the attic and every little thing that's in your junk drawer, all has to be inventoried and valued and everything else. So that can take some time. But the fact of the fire, if you are, if in this process you're going to choose to be honest with us, then your memory will be freshest then. And if you're going to choose to be dishonest with us, then you will have the least amount of time to come up with a story. So we wanted to get the details of the loss, the fire first, and then we would come back later and talk about the claim.
And I'm going to have you go to page 9, line 11, and just have you read to the jury then 11 through 15.
I asked, now, the day of the fire, the day before the fire, who was living at your house? She responded, our 3 sons, myself, and Todd. I asked, what about Brittany? She said, no, she was living in Florida.
I'm going to have you then go to page 13, line 13 through 19.
Page 13, line 13, you said?
Line 13, page 13, line 13, read through line 19, please.
I asked, how long were you and Todd married? She said, we were married in 1993. I asked, how long had you been in a relationship prior to that? She said, well, I don't recall exactly how long we were in a relationship before that. We met in 1989. I asked, how did you meet? And she said, my work.
I'm going to have you flip to page 14, and if you could read the entire page, please.
Oh, sure. My question was, since you were married in 1993, have there been any periods of separation? She said, no. Had either of you ever filed for divorce? She said, no. Had either of you ever discussed divorce? She said, yes. When did discussions of divorce start? She said, I don't know exactly. I know that. And then I interjected a month, a year, 10 years. She said, we had talked about it a few times over the last couple of years. My question was, whose idea was it? She said, I think Todd brought it up first. I asked, and then I just need to get a little bit of the flavor of the dynamics of the relationship between the two of you. Todd wanted a divorce and you wanted to stay together, or was it the other way around? I mean, what was going on when you were discussing it but not doing it? She said, I don't know that first brought it up. I think it was just kind of, I don't know, maybe we should get a divorce. I asked, when he first brought it up, what was your reaction? Did you agree or disagree? She said, I did not want a divorce.
And I will have you continue to page 15, if you could read that page for me as well.
At any point in time, did you decide you wanted a divorce? And she said, yes. I said, when did that start? And she said, maybe in the past year or so, and then we would talk about things and everything would be all right. And I asked, I know relationships are complicated, but was there any particular thing that was driving a wedge between the two of you? Any particular topic that was frequently discussed? She said, finances. I said, what about the finances? She said, we always seem to just not have enough money. I felt that Todd wasn't running his business as well as he could have been, and I felt he should work more. Am I doing this whole page?
Yes, please.
Okay. So then I asked, as in he wasn't doing it smart or he wasn't doing it often enough? And she said, well, I think that kind of goes hand in hand. I think if you're not doing it often enough, I don't think that's very smart. I said, that's true, but sometimes people work all day, all night, but they end up spending more than they make. And so it's not worthwhile. Other people are not working, and that's why it's, and she interjected, I just don't think he was putting enough effort. I said, okay, has there been any discussion of cutting back on any lifestyle or expenses, or selling the house and getting a smaller place, or selling off part of the property?
Now have you read down to line 7.
And she responded, we had sold part of our property. I don't recall exactly what year. I think it may have been 2002 or 2003. So I asked, when you bought it, how much property did you own? She said, close to 120 acres. And I asked, and how much did you sell in 2002 or 2003? She said, around 90 acres.
I'm going to have you slip down then to line 18 and read just the bottom of the page.
I asked, why did you sell the 90 acres? She said, so that we could build and pay off things that we owed. How much did you sell it for? She responded, I don't recall. I believe it was around the figure 99,000 is in my head for some reason, but I'm not sure if that was the exact amount. It seems that that was about, and I said, so about $1,000 an acre. And she said, I believe so.
And I'm going to have you read the next page.
How much debt did you pay off with that? She said, I don't know. I asked, was it enough to pay off the debt and build the house? She said, no. I said, so what did you do for the rest? We borrowed. From whom? Bill Fleetwood was her answer. I asked, who's Bill Fleetwood? She said, he's a gentleman here in Lawrence that Todd has done business with quite a bit over the years. And how much did you borrow from Bill? I'm not positive. I know it went in stages. I'm thinking that it was somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 100,000, but it was in stages as we needed different things. Do you still owe Bill today? She said, no. When did you pay off Bill? when we got our first mortgage on the property. I asked, when was that? She said, I believe that was in December 2003. I asked, how much was that mortgage? She said $200,000. Keep going.
Please.
So then I asked, so you sold property and got roughly $100,000. You borrowed another 100, and then you borrowed 200. So your cost of construction was $300,000. She said, no. How much was the cost of construction? I asked. She said, I don't know. I asked, do you have an estimate? And she said, I don't.
I'm going to have you continue reading to the bottom.
You seem pretty confident it wasn't 3. And she said, right. I said, so what was it? She answered, I really don't know. I know that we paid off a lot of debt with it. I know that Todd made some business investments with some of it as well. I asked, well, what is your best understanding of how much each of those categories was? She answered, I really couldn't give you a good guess. I said, okay, do you think you had $100,000 of debt? She said, no, I don't believe we had. 50,000? She said, maybe. Then I asked, what kind of business investments are we talking about? And she said, Todd would buy military surplus, gloves, clothing, and then resell them to stores. Boots, like Mickey Mouse boots, that kind of thing. Mop suits, carbon suits, and that kind of stuff in large quantities.
And I'll have you stop there. And if you could go to the next page at the bottom on line 24, just read those last 2 lines in the next page.
I asked if they got a building permit to build the house, and she said yes.
And I'll have you read page 20.
Did you get it inspected? And she said yes. And I asked, what do you have in front of you? And she said, I went to Associated Governmental Services and got these copies of I think they're everything that Todd turned in order to begin construction of our home. I asked, to begin construction? She said, I guess you have to file permits and drawings and diagrams before you can receive a permit to even begin. It gives a layout, but there were significant changes made to it that are not reflected in those drawings. I noticed after I picked it up yesterday. Who did these drawings, do you know? And she said, Todd. I believe that Mr. Fleetwood helped him. And so then we marked that as Exhibit 1 to the examination under oath. I said, we've marked those documents that you gave us as Exhibit 1, right? She said, yes. We'll be back to your floor plan in just a minute. That tells us that you filed these in 1998, right? She said, yes. That wasn't the impression I got of how long you were building it. So what was the delay between 98 filing and beginning to build? She said, Todd had a knee surgery, and so he had to stop working on it completely. And so it sat for a few years.
I'm going to have you continue.
I asked, what did you do in 1998 to finance the beginning of construction? She said, well, the original plan was just to build it as we could afford to build it. And so we had a basement done and we paid cash for that. Where did you have that cash? She said, what do you mean where? I said, how did you have that lump sum? I mean, she said, Todd, through working, just saved that amount and paid for it. So a rich uncle didn't die. You didn't get an insurance policy claim or something like that. She said, no. Then I asked, so how far had the house gotten before he had knee surgery? She said the basement was completely concrete, what was to be concrete. And then he had the trusses, I believe they're across the basement. The thing that was going to hold up the first floor? She said, yes, and that was it. And then when did you restart? Answer, I believe that was in 2002. So it sat for 4 years. She said probably 3 or 4 years.
And I'm going to have you go to page 22 and continue reading that page, please.
And why 3 or 4 years? She said, because Todd's knee surgery, he was unable to work and we got into substantial debt at the time. So then I asked, that kind of brings us back to you were in debt, you sold some property, you borrowed the mortgage. It sounds like you were back in debt again at the time of the fire when all this stress was going on in your marriage. Or was it just a matter that you were heading back toward that again? Her answer was, I don't think we've ever been out of debt. We'd have some paid down, but I think we were just in debt continuously. I asked, was there ever a discussion of bankruptcy? She said, no. I said, why not? She answered, because we just felt people that filed for bankruptcy are ignoring their debts, and it hurts you more in the long run if you don't continue to try and pay off your debts. I said, so at the time of the fire, what would you estimate your debt was? She answered, I don't know. Maybe, I'm not really sure. Do you want the mortgage included in that? And I said, let's set the mortgage out for now. She said, okay, maybe $100,000 or so.
And I'm going to have you then go to page 23 and then start at line 8 and then just read down.
I asked her where the $100,000 was owed to, and she said Todd had received loans from family members. I asked which family members. She said his mother. I asked Sandra. She said yes. I believe that was about $30,000. His sister Kathy was the most recent, $25,000. His brother Brad, $7,000. What was Kathy's last name? Martone Stermer. When you said Stermer, you saw that I was right by Brad, right? I'm sorry, Brad Stermer, correct. Medical, she said medical bills. I asked, how much do you figure that was? She said, I don't know, maybe $10,000. A truck around $14,000 or $15,000. Mechanic who has the truck, $3,500.
And I'll have you stop there and just go to page 24. And if you could start on that page, please.
I asked how long he had the truck. She said 7 months. I asked if there was anything else. She said, I'm sure there is. I just can't think of what it is right at this minute. The truck, who's that with? She said, do you mean who it's financed through? First Community Federal Credit Union, I believe. Peace or FC, First Community, I believe. Or no, First Federal Credit Union, sorry. So I asked, what are your payments on that? She said, close to $500 a month. I asked, are you making monthly payments to mom, sister, brother? She said, no. I asked, do you owe any of your friends or family money? Meaning her instead of Todd. She said, I borrowed $1,000 from my grandmother. I asked, what's her name? She told me Frances Pierce. I asked if there was anyone else, and she said, no.
And then I'm going to have you jump down to line 23 and that page, read that to the bottom of the page and continue into the next.
Were there any other wedge issues in your marriage besides finances? And she said, the horses that I had. I said, okay, what was an issue about the horses? She answered, I just think he would get, I just know that he would get frustrated sometimes at the number of horses I had and the work that was involved in taking care of them. He just got tired of that. What about the expenses? She said, no, he never complained too much about that. I asked, how many horses do you own or did you own at the time of the fire? And she said the number of horses that were at the property at the time of the fire was 12.
And I'll have you stop there. And then if you want to go ahead and switch now to page 33 on line 21, if you'll just read the bottom 5 lines of that and continue on to the next page on 34.
I asked her, what was the most you had been at in your marriage? She said 49. I said 49 horses? And she said, yes. I asked, do you have the facilities for 49 horses? And she said, I leased land for them. And when was the last time you had 49 horses? She said, I believe it was in 2002.
And I'm going to stop you there. If you can switch to page 45 for me, please, on line 12. If you could start there and read to the bottom of the page.
I said, now we talked about issues in your marriage. We talked about finances. We talked about horses. Anything else? She said, pretty much no. I guess that pretty much sums it up. So then I asked, let me go through some other categories. Did either of you have any problems with drugs or alcohol? She said, Todd has had some addictions over the years. I said, like what? She said, Vicodin. And when was he addicted to Vicodin? She said, about the time that he had his knee surgery, back when that permit was first gotten, when he blew his knee out. And how did he get past that? She said, I talked to his doctor and had the doctor change our prescriptions. Because I had shoulder surgery right before Todd had his knee surgery. And so the doctor prescribed both of us Vicodin. Keep going.
I'm going to have you skip down then to line 11 and read to the bottom of the page.
What other addictions has he had? She said he has smoked marijuana before and sleeping pills. I asked he used or been addicted to. She said the sleeping pills, I believe he was addicted to. The marijuana, I kind of think he was addicted to that for a very long time, but then he was able to quit smoking it for a long time. He smoked it since then, but not on a daily or regular basis. I asked sleeping pills. She said yes. I said, what was he using, or when was he using those? And she said before then also he had been addicted to them. It's been a couple years.
I'm going to have you go on to page 47 and continue on.
When was the last time that you saw him take a sleeping pill? She said the weekend of the fire. The day of the fire? She said, I think it was the night before, the day before. I asked her when. She said, when I got home that night, he took that and then his medicine for his ear infection that he had. I said, what kind of sleeping pill did he take? And she said, Ambien CR. I asked if that is over the counter. She said, no, it's a prescription. I asked, did he take any that morning? She said, I don't know. Did you see him take any medications that morning? She said, I seen him take his cough syrup, and I know he took some pills, but I don't know which pills he took. I asked several pills. She said, I don't know. I said, you said some pills. I'm just trying to get an idea of what you saw. She answered, I just saw that he had his bottles next to him and he opened them and took his medicine. I don't know. What bottles were there? What was in the bottles? She said, I don't know what the drugs were. There were some that were prescribed by the doctor for his ear, and I don't know.
And go ahead and continue then until the bottom of the page, please.
All
I can't imagine having that many horses.
So then I keep going. I asked like painkillers or like antibiotics. And she said, I think they might've been antibiotics or antihistamines. I'm not sure exactly which else was there. She said, that's all I can recall sitting right there. Any sleeping pills there? She said, I don't think they weren't there. They were in the bathroom. I don't know if he took any of them. Did he act like he was under the influence of any drugs at any point the day of the fire? She said he was loopy, but he had been that way for the last couple of weeks. He had, displayed where he was just kind of doped up, kind of. I don't know how else to describe it, just loopy, and like he'd be talking and then he would just stop in the middle of a sentence and then come back to it minutes later or something, as if there was no pause. Just kind of weird. My son described him one day as being stoned. I asked, did you ever confront him about it? Did you ever ask him what he was using? She said, yeah. He said, what did he say? She said, not to worry about it. It wasn't any of my business.
I'm going to have you go to page 49 and continue on that page.
I asked if there are any other addictions. She said, not that I'm aware of. I asked, did Todd ever have an affair? She said, not that I'm aware of. Did you ever have an affair? She said, no. I said, did either of you ever accuse the other one of having an affair? She said, yes. When and who? I asked. She said, well, Todd has female friends. I have male friends. And, we'd get angry, I guess, sometimes and just accuse the other person or ask the other person, but never, I don't think ever seriously. I guess just kind of, so I asked, had either of you made that accusation within 6 months of the fire? She said, yeah, Todd had. I asked, who did he accuse you of having an affair with? And she said, well, it was actually kind of funny because he came down to where I worked to surprise me one night to meet me for break. And I just so happened to have fallen at work and wasn't there at work. I was at the hospital. And when he called me on my cell phone, I answered it. And he says, are you at work? I said, no. And right then he says, who the hell are you with? And I told him my boss had to take me to the hospital. So then Todd came to the hospital and, everything was fine. But it was just kind of weird that he decides to show up and surprise me on the day that I end up twisting my ankle and going to the hospital.
Well,
So
her
I'll just have you read the
boyfriend
next two
testified.
lines, 6 and 7.
the
Where
last
were you
trial.
working at the time? She said Kemlink.
And I'll have you drop down to line 18 on page 50, and if you could read to the bottom of the page.
Any other accusations? She said he would just sometimes yell something like that, like, "Are you seeing somebody else?" Because, you know, we had talked about divorce, but you never had? And she said, no. Did he ever accuse you of being in a relationship with a woman? And he asked me if I was.
And I'll have you read on page 51
Is that
down
a
to line
standard
16,
question?
please.
With who? She said, my friend Kate Fox. I said, had you and she ever had a relationship like that? And she said, no. So I asked, and what was his basis of that accusation? Did he tell you? And she said, yeah, because Kate had attempted suicide and was in the hospital, and I was really distraught over it. You know, we were really close and we worked together, and I was just really worried about her. And he asked if we were lovers. Was that a serious question, or was he just telling you to stop worrying about her? She said, I think he was getting sick of me worrying about her so much, and it was, you know, just his way of, I don't know, putting things.
I'll have you read then 15 and 16 and stop on that
I
page.
said, okay, you worked with Kate Fox at Chemlink, and she said yes.
And then I'm going to have you go to page 52, and if you could read this page for me, please.
I asked if there were any other recent accusations of affairs. She said no. Then I asked her, you haven't accused him in the last 6 months? And she said no. I asked, what about abuse? Any abuse in the relationship? And she said yes. I said, what kind, when? And she said, different times through the years, just different things. I asked, let's just talk about that in the last year. She answered, the most recent was around Thanksgiving time. He had shoved me across the room, had thrown my cell phone at me, and he pushed me into the wall. I asked her, what was that fight about? And she said, part of it was me making a pineapple upside down cake to work for a potluck and not having made one for home. But I had all the ingredients to make two. I just hadn't made the one for home yet. I was going to make it on the weekend. And then that was about the time that he said, you're treating your coworkers better than your family. And then that night before the fire, he wanted to make love and I didn't. And he came into the bedroom and tried to pry my legs apart and take my pants off, but I didn't let him.
And I'm going to have you continue on that on page 53, please, that page.
I said, so was there any sexual intercourse that night or not? And she said no. And I said, how did you stop him? And she said, I told him it wasn't going to make anything better and that I didn't want to. And if he made me, I would tell the police. I had never said anything like that to him before, so at least he knew I was serious. I asked, have you ever hit him or thrown anything at him? And she said, no. I said, has he ever accused you of it? And she asked, of hitting him? Yes. And I said, but it wasn't true. And she said, right. Did you ever call the police? Did he ever call the police on you? She said, no. I said, did you ever call the police on him? And she said, yes. Before we ever moved to Lawrence, sometime prior to 1996. I couldn't give you the date. I didn't actually call the police on him. The girl was staying at our house, called the police, but I had talked with them. And at that time, he had hit me and pushed me quite a bit, and I had some marks on me, and two police officers came, a male and a female. And when he came out, the female officer was with me, and I was about ready to file a report. And he came out and said, are you sure you want to do this? Because you'll go to jail too. And I asked what he meant. And he said, well, if you accuse me of hitting you, then I'll accuse you of hitting me and we'll both go to jail. All the grandparents were out of town at the time, and the police officer said that was true, and that if we didn't have someplace for the kids to go, that they'd have to have, I don't remember who they said, but it came down to like protective services would have to come and get the kids. And Todd says, are you sure you want to do this? And I talked to the police officer, and she said, well, yeah, it's his word against your word. And if you both say that you both got hit, then we have to take both of you in and let the judge decide. So I didn't pursue it any further, and they left, and we spent the night there in the house, and he apologized to me.
You continue.
So that was the only time that you called the police on him. And she said, well, like I said, I didn't call the police were called. But as far as abuse between he and I believe Those two incidents were around Thanksgiving time and that time.
So I'm going to stop you right there. So in the duration of the marriage, she's saying that she's had two incidents, one prior to 1996 and then one at Thanksgiving time.
And the one the night before the fire.
And the one the night before the fire. Thank you
That's
very
what
much.
she wanted me to believe, yes.
And then I'm going to then have you start at line 24 on page 54, and if you could continue on there.
I said, thank you very much. Who called the police around Thanksgiving? And she said, Kate Fox. I asked what? And she said, Kate Fox. I said, what was Kate Fox doing there? And she answered, she wasn't there. She had called me on the phone to come and pick me up for work because we rode together and most every day. And I was crying and hysterical and upset. And I told her I couldn't talk to her. And so she called the police.
And I'm going to have you jump down to line 21 and read the bottom of that page, please.
I asked, this incident the night before the fire, where he tried to force himself on you, what kind of situation did that create between the two of you? She answered, he wasn't happy. I said, how are you? And she said, well, I actually felt relieved that he stopped. I mean, he kept yelling at me about it and different things, but not too bad. And he told me that if I would just make love with him, that everything could be just fine.
I'll have you continue.
I said, did you at any time from that moment on? She clarified, make love with him. I said, yes. And she said, no. I asked any sort of sexual contact at all the day of the fire, and she said, no. Any more instances like that where he was trying to force it? And she said, no. I asked, did you tell anybody about this incident before the fire? And she said, no. I said, have you told anyone about this since the fire? She said, yes. I asked who? She said, I told my mother, I told Mr. Getting, I told my counselor.
Now I'll have you stop there. And if you can go to page 57, start halfway through line 23.
But up until Kate Fox and I began working together, that was the most I had ever hung out with another female. And that was mainly because we worked together and we carpooled every single day.
And I'm going to have you stop there. And if you can go to page 62, please, on line 21.
I was asking about medications, and she said she was taking Lexapro since November of 2006, and I was given the prescription for Ambien CR. That was my prescription, but I wasn't taking it.
And 3, and go to the 4th line down and just read lines 4 and the portion of 5.
This was her response. She said, the Ambien, I took it a couple of times, but it made me feel too groggy and too sluggish.
So you can stop there.
Okay.
And then I'm gonna have you go to page 64, line 16. If you could just read 4 lines for me.
You described him in the morning of the fire having a tray of pill bottles by him. I meant what? And she said, no, I just said a couple of pill bottles. And I think that they were just what was prescribed for his ear.
And I'm gonna have you go to page 66, line 10, and if you could read that from 10 to the bottom of the page.
66, line 10. We're in the middle of an answer. She says, I was thinking about some things and I had spoken with an attorney that we know who had handled some of Corey's custody and stuff, and asked him that if Todd ever did decide he wanted a divorce, if he would represent me. I asked, who is that? She said, Mr. Jeff Gagey, G-A-G-I-E. But I don't know if you would need that, because you said within the last couple of years, and that was back in maybe 2002 or so. So it was a few more years than I was thinking. I asked, you contacted Mr. Gagey? She said, well, actually, I was using Mr. Is it Gagey or Gagey? Do you know?
Gagey.
Gagey, okay. Well, I actually was using Mr. Gagey for the rescue case of the twin horses. And I asked, you needed an attorney to rescue horses? And she said, yeah, sometimes you do. I asked, I mean, I'm not opposed to using attorneys. And she said, sometimes you do. And, you know, Todd had got frustrated and upset about so many horses coming in all at once. and the fact that the previous owner of them had changed her mind about turning them over and that. So Mr. Gaggy was representing me on that, and I told him that Todd was really upset and frustrated, and he had spewed off about getting a divorce.
I'll have you stop there.
Sure.
And then I'll just have you skip down to line 14.
When did you have that conversation with Mr. Gaggy? She said, I don't know, probably sometime around 2002, then again in November of 06.
And I'll have you just jump down to line 19 and continue there.
This is her answer. In November, I went to Mr. Gaggy and asked him if he would do a divorce for me because I just decided that I just couldn't keep living this way. I had told Todd after that it was just too much. And he gave me some paperwork at that time. I didn't file, I didn't pay him or anything, but he gave me the paperwork that would be necessary to file. So when you ask me if I filed, no, I had never filed. But yes, I did talk to him pretty extensively about it. And I had told him about some different incidences that happened and that made me feel really uncomfortable.
I'll have you continue.
I asked her, like, what? And she said, well, Todd had been out hunting one morning, and I was sitting in the dining room at the computer before we moved it into the other room. And he came up the stairs. He was holding his gun and cleaning it. And he was holding his gun and a cleaning kit. And out of the corner of my eye, I could see that the gun was open. It was like a shotgun or a rifle. And he was carrying a cleaning kit. And he came over and he set the cleaning kit on the dining room table behind me and just held up the gun. Well, I could see the reflection in the computer screen that the gun was not pointed directly at my head, but I never turned around and faced him or anything at that point and didn't act like I seen him exactly what he was doing. And he held it there and he said, I'm really sorry I have to do this. And I turned around and just looked at him and I said, you're a jerk. And he said, why? And I said, why would you joke around like that? And he says, you were so scared. And he just started laughing at me. And he had told me Todd had been really studying the Bible a lot Todd had been really studying the Bible a lot this past year, 2006. I asked, he told me, and she said, pardon me. And I said, did you say someone told you Todd was studying the Bible? And she said, no. I said, Todd had been studying the Bible pretty heavily over the past year, a lot more than he ever had before, and well, just a lot. And he told me that in the Bible, it says that a man who gets a divorce from a woman, if she should remarry after that divorce, then it's still considered, in the Bible, it's considered adultery. So that man who divorces that woman is considered just as much of a sinner because he caused that sin. And he says, so I can't divorce you, but you can divorce me. So I told Mr. Gaggy that. Keep going?
Nope, I'm going to have you stop there. I'll have you read on line 19 down.
I asked, so any more episodes like that in between November and when the fire occurred? And she said, just a lot of little things. Like he would talk about divorce. He would talk about death. He would talk about suicide. He would talk about insurance. He would talk about moving to Canada. Just a lot of just different things.
And I'll have you read that on page 70.
When would he talk about suicide? She asked, what do you mean when? Just different times? Like he'd say, I'd be better off dead. I'm so sick of this. I asked what was going on when he'd say, I'm so sick of this. She said, being in debt all the time, not having energy to work on the house. You know, our house wasn't complete. And he would stay home, not go to work, not work on the house, not do anything. He didn't this last year. I mean, he was an avid hunter before. We always had a lot of meat, deer meat and that. And this last year, he hardly ever went hunting. He got 2 deers, and I think that's the least he got in many years. The boys wouldn't go hunting with him this year. I asked why. She said, just too busy with other things. And that frustrated Todd. And he would say things like, the boys don't even enjoy hunting anymore, and I don't enjoy hunting anymore. He didn't play church basketball this year, and just a lot of different things. He just didn't. I asked, did you guys attend church regularly? She said, no.
Now have you stop there.
All right.
And then if you could go to page 75, at the bottom of the page, on line 24.
I asked, what time did you wake up the morning of the fire? She said probably around 7 o'clock.
And I'll have you continue that on page 76.
Did you have an alarm set? She said no. I asked, were all three sons and Todd home when you woke up? She said yes. Who all was awake when you woke up? She said no one. I asked, what did you do? And just to clarify, this is the part of the examination where I go through moment by moment on the day of the fire on everything that happened, so that we have a very clear timeline and we can start to verify the story. So I asked her, what did you do? She said, just puttered around about the house. I asked, I really need to know all the puttering. She said, I'm sorry, I'm trying to think what I did first thing. I always get up and brush my teeth right away. I got dressed. At some point that morning, I remember straightening my bathroom. Did you do any cooking? Did you do any laundry? She said, not right away that day, no. Coffee gal? She said, no. I went down to the convenience store and got some eggs, and I believe it seems like it was Smoky Links, maybe some milk. I said, okay, wait, when you left to go to the convenience store, was anyone else awake? She said, no. I asked, do you know what time that was? She said, I know it was before 10 o'clock. I asked, you went to what store? She said, the Village Marathon. I asked in Lawrence. She said, uh-huh.
I mean, stop, just jump down to line number 9.
What all did you buy there? She said, I bought some eggs, some, I believe it was Smoky Links. I think I got some milk, and I filled up my blazer. I asked, so you did buy gas for the blazer? And she said, yes. I asked, how much gas? Do you remember? She said, I don't remember. I think the total bill for everything combined all came to, I believe, around $20. I asked, anything else? She said, no. I asked, did you have any gas? Did you put any gas in a gas can that day? She said, no. I said, are you sure? She said, I know I didn't. And I asked, you know you did not? And she said, right.
I'll have you continue on page 78.
How long were you there? She said, not very long, just long enough to do that, just to purchase those things. I asked, what time did you get back home? She said, within minutes. We only lived 5 minutes away at the most. I asked, so you were home in 15 minutes? She said, maybe 15, 20 minutes. I was gone a total of. I asked, now what? She said, I began cooking. I asked, is there anybody awake? She said, I can't remember if Todd was awake yet or not. I know that while I was cooking, he was up, but I can't remember if he was up before then or not. I asked, did you start cooking right away? She said, as soon as I got back, yes. I asked, the eggs and sausage? She said, yes. And then I put coffee on for Todd because he is a coffee drinker. Okay. And at some point he was awake, and she said, yes. I asked, while you were cooking? She said, yes. What else happened? I told him when he came out into the kitchen, I told him I had gone down and gotten those things and told him that I used the debit card. The debit card for what bank? I asked. She said, his debit card from his business account. I asked, why did you use the debit card from his business account? She said, because I knew there was money in there. I asked, where does he have his business account? She said, it's now LaSalle Bank in Paw Paw. I asked, do you have any records of that account with you today? She said, I don't. I'm sorry. I said, can you get those for me? She said, I can try. I don't know if the bank will let me have them because my name was not on the account. Keep going?
Yes, please.
So I asked, how did you get his debit card? She said, I took it out of his wallet. I asked, was that common for you? She said, yes. And then I continued my question, or was that unusual? She said, no, it was common for me. I asked, was it common to use the business account to buy groceries? She said, yes. He would write me a check from there for different things. I would either deposit it into the joint account or cash it and use it for whatever we were supposed to use it for. I told him about other purchases I made with it over the course of the weekend, and he got pretty upset because I hadn't written them into the registry yet. And the fact that I had used it a few times. So I asked, so what did you buy over the weekend with it? She said, I bought a disposable camera. I asked why. She said, my grandmother had her 90th birthday party on Saturday, and I walked off and forgot to take my digital camera. And so I grabbed a disposable so I could get some pictures of family, and I filled prescriptions at Walgreens and at Walmart on Saturday.
And I'm gonna have you stop there, and I'm gonna have you go to page 81. Yes.
About 5 minutes or
Oh,
so,
that's fine.
unless you're getting near the end, but I don't think you
No,
are.
so I mean, we can end it anytime, Your Honor.
Want to do it now?
That would be fine. We can do
Okay,
that if you
okay.
want, if the court would like to.
Okay. So I don't think anyone's objecting. Right? Okay. So let me read you my admonition again.
Should I step down there?
Yes, thank you. Okay, you guys should have this memorized by now. During the trial, do not read, listen to, or watch any news reports about the case. Under the law, the evidence you consider to decide the case must meet certain standards. For example, witnesses must swear to tell the truth, and lawyers must be able to cross-examine them. Because news reports do not have to meet these standards, they could give you incorrect or misleading information that might unfairly favor one side. So to be fair to both sides, you must follow this instruction as well as all of my others regarding no communications and no research or investigations or social media, things like that. I'll have you return tomorrow at 9 o'clock to the jury room, please. And I'm still basically on schedule. Counsel, any matters to address? The jury has left.
I have none, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. We'll be in recess. We're off. Yes, now we're off. Susan, the reason.
I think that a lot of the things that they fought about, is the horses. I don't think he wanted that many horses. 49 horses. That's a lot of horses. I think the most we ever had was 3. We didn't have. How many acres did they have? Oh, like 110? I wrote it down somewhere. I don't know where I wrote it. They sold 90 acres. And she rescued 20 something at once. And he wanted a divorce over the horses. I love animals. And I don't want to see animals abused. But I'm not going to lose my marriage over it. Not happening. So, I'm with you, Jelly Bean, but they're not his horses. They're her horses, which is why there was all this strife in the marriage, because she wanted the horses and he didn't. And so all of the money was getting eat up taking care of the horses. He should have kicked her to the curb a long time ago. And her boyfriend testified at her first trial. I wonder if he's going to testify in this one. But they're already up to witness, what did I say? 23? I wonder how many more the prosecution's going to call. I haven't seen her sons in the courtroom. And that one woman they keep showing that's always on her phone, I don't know if that's a daughter or if it's like a reporter or something. Because usually they don't let people on their phone unless they're a reporter. So how would horses pay for themselves? If somebody was paying to come ride them. Or if they weren't her horses and people were boarding them on her property and paying to board them there. Oh, okay. Could be. I think she did say something about in that 48 hours episode. That's why I keep mentioning the 48 hours episode, because that's the only thing I watched on this. I'm not trying to sound like a broken record. That's just the only thing I know about this case, other than the trial itself. This trial is that episode of 48 hours. I think she did say they were bringing in some money, but I can't remember why. I can't remember what she said they were doing. I don't know. And it just seems weird, when she talks about the cops being called, and they're like, well, you both have to go to jail because you both hit each other. And then them saying, oh, well, never mind. Just leave then. Nowadays, no, you go to jail. You can't change your mind because the new DV laws are like, they don't have to press charges. They just get taken whether you press charges or not. It just seems weird for them to be like, oh, well, then never mind. Because there's nobody to take care of the kids. No, they don't care now. They just, no, you're going to jail. I had horses. I had a horse when I was, how old was I when I got that horse? 13, I think. I did not know how to ride a horse. Nobody ever taught me how to ride a horse. No, I was older than that. Because I always had to wait till my dad was home because I wasn't strong enough to get the saddle cinched tight enough. And she would always take a deep breath in to like make her belly bigger. So I couldn't cinch the saddle too tight. And so then after I cinched it, she would let the breath out. So then the saddle would be looser. So I remember one time I was like, okay, I can do this. I can do this without daddy. I'm a big girl. I can do this. She did the thing where she sucked in the air. I thought I had the saddle nice and tight. She let the air out. I pulled the bench from the picnic table up beside her. I let her up beside the bench. I climbed up on the bench, stuck my foot in the stirrup, went to throw my leg over, and the whole saddle went over because it wasn't tight anymore because she let the air out. And I fell back onto the picnic bench and fell back on the ground. Talk about hurt. And the way I originally hurt my back. And I think this is what started the fibromyalgia, because they say that they used to say, they don't know what causes fibromyalgia, but they used to say that it's like dormant until you have some type of accident, and then it becomes active. So all of my aches and pains and symptoms and whatever started when I was 16 after I fell off my horse. The stirrup broke off. She started trotting, and I went to like kind of seat myself better in the saddle, and I put pressure down on the stirrups, and one of the stirrups fell off, and I fell over. So that's how I hurt my back. I fell onto my right shoulder. It's probably how I screwed up my shoulder too. I fell on my right shoulder, and then my head, and then I twisted and fell back on my back. So that was my first big injury that screwed me up for the rest of my life. But it wasn't her fault. She came back. She stopped and came back to check on me to make sure I was. She's like blowing in my face and stuff, and I'm just like, She was really sweet, but she didn't like to be. The reason why we got her really cheap, because the people have been trying to sell her, and I guess one of the kids, I don't know if it was somebody that, I don't know if it was people that owned her or some people that were like, had come out to see her, to buy her. But anyway, she bucked the kid off and broke his collarbone. But my dad knew this. My mom didn't. And she was like, if you told me about that, I wouldn't have got that darn horse. And Dad was like, no, she didn't do it for no reason. Another kid hit her in the butt with a 2x4 while the other kid was on there. That's why she bucked. She didn't just buck to buck. Now, she did, however, my brother came to visit, because my brothers are a lot older than me. So, we didn't grow up together. So by the time I was a teenager, they were out of the house. So my older brother came to visit, and he decided to ride her. She did buck him off for no reason. And we lived on a busy highway. She bucked him off right in the middle of the highway. Thank God no cars were coming. And of course I thought it was hilarious, because he's my brother that loved to terrorize me as a child. I was like, good girl. I was like, Randy, what are you doing in the middle of the highway, huh? Your horse bucked me off. But she never bucked me off. I only fell because the stirrup broke. I don't know why she bucked Randy off, because it was so fast. It was like 1 minute he was on her, and the next minute he's in the middle of the road. No idea what he did. She didn't like it, whatever it was. But we had to get rid of her because I was allergic. I'm allergic to animals, y'all. Like, seriously, allergic. So one day we had like this festival in our town. Small towns are notorious for festivals. And we had a festival, and we had like a play about the founding of our town, and we needed a horse for the play. So, and I'm allergic to iodine, and the marine biology club had gone, like the day before, we had gone out and gotten like shrimp and oysters and stuff. So I'd been in the water the day before getting shrimp and oysters, and then we shelled the shrimp. And so I guess I got some iodine from the shrimp from shelling and deheading the shrimp and stuff. And then I rode the horse to town because we didn't live that far from town. So I rode the horse to town, and then I did this play in town with the horse, and then rode her back. And I guess between the iodine from the shrimp and then the horse, I could not breathe. So I don't know if it was a panic attack just from all the excitement and everything, or if it was really not being able to breathe from the allergens that I'd been exposed to. I don't know what happened. But after that happened, my mom made my dad get rid of the horse. And I'm like, it was the circumstances, Mom. Seriously. I've been around shellfish, and then I was riding my horse on the highway to town. I don't really think it was the horse's fault. So don't get rid of my. She didn't listen. She didn't listen. So we gave the horse to my uncle, and he bred her, and she died during childbirth. And I guess the baby died too, because there was never a baby horse that I remember. So, but she was sweet. Her name was Velvet. We called her Velvet. I used to, back in the 80s, there was a thing where you would put like a ribbon in your hair. Like you would clip it in with just like a clip, and it would be a long ribbon with like feathers on the end. And I used to wear those in my hair, and they would like lay here. And she went to bite one time, and she bit my boob. Don't, what are you doing? Don't bite me. Don't bite my boob, horse. Go away. She was so sweet though. I fed her out of my hand all the time. I feed her carrots out of my hand all the time. And we put her, my mom used to love Kentucky Fried Chicken. Like she was addicted to Kentucky Fried. We ate more Kentucky Fried Chicken than a normal person does. And oh, that's possible. That is very possible. So we would feed her, like we had feed bags for her, and we would keep the Kentucky Fried Chicken buckets. They don't come in buckets anymore, do they? Do they? We keep the buckets, and we would use that to dip her feed out of the big bags to go put in her feed trough. So after that, every time we came back home with chicken from Kentucky Fried Chicken and she saw the bucket, she'd whinny because she associated that bucket with her food. I don't even want to ask why they had 5 legs. Are you talking about boy horses? Yep, that you're probably allergic to it. I'm allergic to wool. Animal. But once it's like all done, you know, like turned into a sweater or whatever, then I'm fine. But like when I crochet, I use acrylic yarn. I don't use natural stuff. Although after it's already processed into yarn, it's probably okay, but like I don't want to chance it. That's funny. Yeah, I'm allergic to nature. I'm allergic, but the weird thing is though, like 98% of the population is allergic to dust mites. I'm not allergic to dust mites. It's like it figures the one thing that everybody's allergic to, I'm not allergic to. I don't know. I don't like trying to think. There's something else that everybody's allergic to that I'm not allergic to. I can't remember what it is. Allergies are so weird. Like with cats and well, I haven't been tested for dogs since I've had dogs. But with cats, if you do like the little prick skin test on me, I come up as not allergic. But if you do the deeper one, like where they do a deep in like into your muscle, it it will itch like crazy. I'm like, that's not fair. Because I was like, yay, I'm not allergic to cats anymore. And they're like, no, you're still allergic to cats. And I'm like, how do you know I'm still allergic to cats? And they're like, because allergies don't just go away. You've just become used to them. So we need to do a deeper test. And I'm like, but no, that's not fair. So I'm still allergic. The cats actually do not bother me anymore. Spike, I don't know if you guys noticed after I held him today, my arms were itching. The other day, all I did was like he was loving on me. We were in the bed together and he was rubbing on me and my both arms broke out in hives bad. But sometimes they don't bother me at all. Really? Creamy salad dressing. I wonder what it is. What's in it that are you allergic to dairy? Is it dairy or is it just salad dressing? My mom was allergic to codeine. Well, not allergic. She was, I thank God I'm not allergic to any antibiotics. That's another thing. A lot of people are allergic to antibiotics. I'm not allergic to any antibiotics. Thank God, because I probably would have died after chemo when my immune system was all screwed up and I got all those infections. I probably would have died if I'd been allergic to antibiotics then. I was on so many different kinds. I don't even remember what all I was on. But I'm not allergic to dairy, but huh. That's weird. I'm not allergic to dairy. I'm slightly lactose intolerant, but sometimes milk, if I drink milk, it'll make me like have trouble breathing. Like I'll cough and get like congested. Like one time, I used to have an inhaler. I don't, well, they thought I had asthma, but they were like, okay, it could be asthma, it could be allergies, but we're going to treat it like asthma. And then years later, I did the allergy testing thing. And I love blue cheese and blueberries and shellfish. Yeah, but I just deal with them. Like I don't have anything. I had an EpiPen for a while too, but I'm just like none of mine are like life threatening. So I'm just like, oh, I just deal with it. I feel so bad for people that can't eat certain foods though, because but also too though, if you have an allergy to a food that bad, you probably like you had it once and had the allergy and you've never had it again, so like you don't miss it, right? I would imagine. But like people that are like, oh, I can't eat strawberries, I'm allergic to strawberries, or I'm allergic to peanuts. Those two things, I'm like, oh my gosh, I would die if I couldn't eat peanuts or peanut butter. I just, but I don't even have an EpiPen anymore. But I can remember back when they gave me an inhaler, like my dad and I were going somewhere and we'd gone to Starbucks and I got a Frappuccino and got down to the bottom and I sucked some of the whipped cream up through the straw and the whipped cream like triggered a coughing fit. And I was driving down the road and couldn't breathe. Like I started coughing and then I started like gasping for air and I'm like, Dad, give me my dad was in the passenger seat. I'm like, give me my purse, find my inhaler. And I had to use my inhaler because of the whipped cream set off whatever. And I don't know if it might be because of the fibromyalgia, because some people have like chemical reactions. And I remember one time we were behind like a tar truck, and just the fumes from the tar set me off. So I think it's like a chemical reaction thing. I think it has to do with the fibromyalgia. Oh, that's a good idea. I forget what it's called. Chemical sensitivity syndrome, I don't remember what it's called. I used to have this really neat book that was written by a doctor that had fibromyalgia, and it had every symptom ever. I used it. Travis doesn't read very well, and I didn't know that when we first started dating. And I was like, "Here, read this book," and he was like, "I don't want to read the book. You tell me what the book says," because he didn't want to tell me that he didn't read well. And I went through it and I highlighted sections and stuff. So I just ended up reading stuff to him. I'm like, okay, this is what I have, and this is my symptoms, and there's another book that I still haven't read that I want to read because I helped the researcher that wrote it. I was part of his research studies at University of Florida. There was this contraption thingy that I put my hand on it, and it was like this thing made out of plexiglass, and it had a circle here, and it had this piece of metal that came up and hit my hand at intervals, and it was hot. And it would start slow, and they would gradually increase the speed and the heat. And I'd have to tell them on a scale of 1 to 10 if it hurt, because we have heat intolerance. But there was another one where I put my feet in hot water, and I loved that. And they were like, that's really weird, because people with fibromyalgia usually can't stand hot water on their feet. I'm like, I love it. I adore it. Keep it coming. But the thing with the hand was weird. It wasn't long enough to burn, actually, like leave a burn, but just long enough for you to like feel the heat. It was kind of weird, but I don't think I got paid. There was another one they were going to do. I was going to get paid. I had to call in every morning and give them like my pain level. And then it was like a double blind study where they were going to put me on a medication. I wasn't going to know if it was going to be the real thing or the placebo, but my pain level was so up and down, which it still is to this day. It's like one day I'm great, and then the next day I just, want to crawl in a hole. My favorite, well, not my favorite, but one of my favorite dressings, I love raspberry vinaigrette. So, that's better for you than creamy dressings. Anyway, there's, at Culver's restaurant, it's called, I think it's called a cranberry bacon blue salad, It has grilled chicken and cranberries and bacon and blue cheese crumbles. And then it has raspberry vinaigrette dressing on it. It is so good. That salad and then the Zaxby's sensation salad or whatever it's called. Those are my two favorites. I love when we go to eat there. And McDonald's used to have a Southwest. It was called like a Southwest salad or something like that. They had like wonton strips and it was spicy. It was good too. But McDonald's doesn't have salads anymore. They don't even have grilled chicken sandwiches anymore. They've just gone straight out junk. Everything's junk. There's nothing healthy at McDonald's anymore at all. They don't even care. They're not even trying. Speaking of food, I have to go cook dinner. Yeah, I love garlic too. And if it's garlic, I don't have to share with the dogs. I told Travis the other day, I said, eating cheese in this house, it's like getting paid by YouTube. I get 70% and the dogs get 30%. Okay, guys, I will see you in the morning for more of this wonderful trial. And we get to see if the defense attorneys are going to be nice to the insurance company and attorney tomorrow. So, yes, Wendy's taco salad is good. But I didn't know. I got it. I didn't know that they give you the whole thing of chili to pour over it. And we were in the car. I'm like, well, I can't eat this till we get home because I'm such a klutz. I'm like, no, I will make a mess. You will kill me for making a mess all over your truck, baby. We got to go home first. I can't eat this in the truck. Bye, guys. I love you. Thank you so much for coming out. You guys are awesome. See you tomorrow. Have a good night.